Good morning, everyone. We'll give it another minute. All right, folks, let's get started. Good morning. Welcome from myself and Jay. We've been doing this for quite a number of years. Since 2018, we had two RU sites, and we run the altREU program since 2019, I believe. And so this is another final symposium. It's always exciting to see everybody present and talk about their really cool projects. This year we had the biggest cohorts ever, 10 RU students or interns, 52 alt RU students, and 12 interns in my lab. Not everyone is presenting today and can be here, unfortunately, but we have 32 presentations, I believe, starting now and going till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So pretty full program. Thank you, all students, and congrats to all students who went through the program successfully. Big thanks to all the mentors, big thanks to all the supporters. These internships were funded by a variety of sources, NSF, Daimler Truck Portland Professorship, and a variety of other sources. And many folks were involved over this summer helping us run the program. Good, so big thanks. The team that run the show was Jay, Nick, grad student, and myself, as you probably all know by now. Good. I wanted to announce that once again this year, students are publishing proceedings. They will be published later this year, sometime towards the end of September, most likely. We'll send out reminders and emails once they're out. They will be available on Amazon, but also for free on PDX Scholar. That has been a big success over the last 2 years, and there's a team doing great work as we speak, editing the next proceedings. As I said, we have a full slate today between 9 and 2 p.m. with a couple of breaks. The biggest challenge is always to stay on time. I will do my best. You've got 5 minutes plus 2 minutes for questions and transitions, and the presentation style is Ignite. That means 20 slides, 15 seconds per slide, auto advanced. Feel free to drop off anytime you want, come back. I will keep the Zoom running even during the breaks. With that, we are going to move into the first presentation by Maxwell and Abdiziz. Are you folks ready? Stop sharing here.
Yes, we are ready.
All right, whenever you're ready, share the screen and I will post the link to the program again in the chat for those who joined later.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen, yeah.
Oh, okay, just a minute. Let me switch to the autoplay mode.
Looks good, yeah. Slideshow. Just make sure you have your 15 seconds, yeah. All right.
Okay, so
Looks great. Thank you, guys. Go ahead.
Abdelaziz, you can begin. Okay. I don't know if Abdelaziz is there. Abdelaziz.
I don't see him online. You should probably just do it yourself if you can.
Okay, so let me can I start over again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Oh, I
so
see. He just joined.
he joined.
He just joined, yeah.
Okay, so Abdiaziz, are you ready?
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone. My name is Abdiaziz Ibrahim. I'm from United States International University, Africa. And this is Team AX. We are going to walk you through ransomware watch. So ransomware is not evenly distributed. 88% of breaches at small and medium-sized businesses involve ransomware. And only 39% of this, 14% of these small, medium businesses have adequate measures in place to combat attacks, which means the remaining 86% do not have the capability to circumvent the breaches of this. Another issue is that this ransomware takes less than 45 minutes to fully encrypt the full disk of small, medium enterprise environments. So the solution is, the issue is, they only depend on signature antivirus that only catch what it has already seen. So it cannot catch a newly or sophisticated ransomwares. So the other problem is they cannot use enterprise endpoint detection response, which is fast due to it is exorbitant pricing. It's so expensive. Also, they don't have the capabilities to navigate and run such solutions. So the issue is signature-based antiviruses are affordable but slow. Enterprise EDR are fast, but they are out of reach. So we are not asking what it matches. We are asking how it behaves. So we are going to come up with a solution that can detect any sophisticated ransomware, depending on how it behaves in the system. So what solutions are there? We have RWGuard that fires only after the attacker touches a decoy file. So the problem with this is it cannot detect a ransomware if it encrypts normal files. Another solution is Shield FS that judges on process at a time, one process at a time. So it cannot monitor different processes. So those are the limitations of the solutions that do exist.
So our design choice is mainly focused on four signals, which are the write rate, file entropy, API seconds, and the registry activity. And they are fused into a single jointly trained classifier, which is not only the four scores, they are not scored separately. So this is the pipeline where we capture process telemetry across the four feature groups, extract them into one joint feature vector, and then we score it to the classifier. So for containment, we are using two-tier design so that the false positive does not kill somebody's backup job or a process that is not a ransomware activity. So we used the CIC Malmem 2022 dataset, which has 5 ransomware families, which are Arco, Conti, Maze, Pisa, and Shade, which are roughly 200 independent samples. So our first result was so perfect. We were getting an accuracy score of 100%, which was wrong, and the false positive rate was 0%, which you were targeting. But it means that maybe something was wrong, such that it was too good. So we want to ensure that this model is not shallow and that it is not detecting the real ransomware. So the feature we were using was the SVC scan.n services, where we were doing the service count and every single ransomware family. It sits at exactly 389 services, where the Benin sits at 392 to 395, and that's not the ransomware behavior. So maybe it could be the machine dumps that were captured, and the classes they differ by capture and by environment. So this accuracy, which was greater than 90%, and a false positive rate, which was under 2%. So it means that we did not miss what we were targeting. Just means that there are some things that are unmeasured, and these numbers are real. So they don't just answer the question that we had initially asked. So maybe to curb all this, we are going to test it in a real environment because we are using a virtual machine to do our testings and all that. So yeah, maybe we can capture our own telemetry and match the conditions for the both classes and wire the live dashboard to the trained model. So that's pretty much it. We may not have captured everything within the 5 minutes, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So you said you tested things in a sandbox, is that right?
Yes, because we could not simulate a real ransomware on a live machine.
Okay, yeah. I guess there's risk that you will be blocked and get in trouble. Right. Very cool. Okay, in the interest of time, I think we're going to move on to Rishi and Rikita. Thank you again, folks. Rishi, are you ready?
Yeah, hey, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. So
Oh,
whenever you're ready, share your screen. Yeah.
yeah.
My name is Shrikrita, and my teammate Rishi and I built Helix Guard. We're from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, participating in the altREU program. Since 2019, more than 26 million people have spit in a tube and mailed it to a genetics company. Most of them never opened the file that came back. We spent 10 weeks reading it very carefully. It's a text file. 640,000 rows, each row in one position in your genome where people differ from each other. You can open it in Notepad. No password, no encryption. A few hundred of those rows are the ones that actually matter. Alzheimer's risk, hereditary breast cancer, Huntington's, a clotting disorder. If you know which row numbers to look at, they're right there. Now say you want to use a diet app that uses your DNA. It asks for the file, the whole file. So it probably needs 50 rows out of the 640,000, but it still keeps all of them. In April 2025, OpenSNP, one of the biggest open genetic data platforms, deleted every user's data and shut down. The founder said the risk had changed. You can't rotate your genome like a password. So we built Helix Guard. You give it your file, it gives you back a safer one. It runs on your own machine and it never sends anything anywhere. And that was the requirement that we started from. It doesn't delete the risky rows, it swaps them for the version that most people have. Deletion is obvious and it breaks the file, while a swap is quiet and the file still works everywhere. But that alone isn't enough. Positions near each other get inherited together. So if two are tightly linked, seeing one tells you the other. So hiding one and leaving its neighbor doesn't actually hide anything. So we added controlled random noise to those linked neighbors. There's a dial. You turn it up, more noise, less leaks through. You turn it down, you get cleaner data, and that's your second layer. 6 genes, almost 9,000 known harmful variants pulled from the public NIH database, about 10 seconds to clean one genome, 17 tests to make sure that we didn't break the file.
So we actually ran these on 10 real genomes. And these are not made up ones. These are actual people who donated their data through Harvard's Personal Genome Project and includes different chip versions and different ages. So 51 people in that group were actually carriers. So they had a risk variant sitting in their file. But after we ran it, 0 of those risk variants show up, and all 51 were actually hidden. So here's one of them. This person carries APOE4, and it is the strongest common genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's that we know about. So once we opened up the clean file, it looked like everyone else's. That trait just disappeared. So that was one of the 5. But this person had 555 positions in their file. But at 545 of them, they had already carried the common version, which many of us carry. And only 5 of them actually needed changing. So we also wrote an attacker to break our own tool. It tried to guess carriers from the linked neighbors. It did no better than guessing blind, and there was 0 improvement, and we could not break it that way. So the real limit is not our code, but it is a chip. Older chips and tests read fewer positions, and one file gave us 110 things to protect, while another chip gave us 550. So our linkage data was actually thin. The public reference panel only had correlation data for 15 of our nearly 9,000 positions that we found. But we also found that out late, so this limits everything we could claim about the noise layer that we built. And which is why the second layer barely moved anything. The boring part, swapping in the common version, does almost all the work. The clever part, the noise, is marginal at this scale, which we spent a couple weeks on. So we spent weeks on the clever part. All it was important. In the future, I think we should work on fixing that to make it more efficient and optimize it for more profound results.
Very
And
cool.
that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, questions. We have time for one question. Anybody can ask questions anytime. Just put it in the chat or speak up. So you have your approach is not encrypting the data, it's masking the traits that you want to mask. Is that correct?
Yeah, essentially, so we're not encrypting anything. We're just replacing the risk variant with a common variant that you find in like the majority of the human population.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. Are you making this? Oh, you already have it on GitHub, right? Is it public?
Yeah, it's already on GitHub.
Okay, very cool. Good. We can check it out then. Great. Thank you again. We have next up Andres Tyen Ming.
Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
so what we have built is a benchmark for BLM UI grounding accuracy under accessibility rendering configurations. My name is Andres Blanco, and my teammates are Minle and T-Tang. T couldn't be here for the presentation today, and we're all from the Ansai College.
Did you press play?
No, I think I forgot
Okay.
to. Yes, we can just skip this one, I guess.
All right. Good.
Our research question is the current recent language model makes materially degrade in-text localization grounding accuracy when tested under accessibility rendering configuration, and how does the magnitude of this degradation compare across model architectures?
Think if you advance manually, it's not gonna do it. You gotta play.
Wait, I'm a little bit confused right now. It should be advancing now.
But I think you moved it random or manually first, that it stops.
Could I just continue moving it manually for the rest of the presentation?
Well, you're gonna be out of time probably. but it's
Wait.
fine. Yeah. Just keep going.
Yeah, so the problem we identify is that AI phone agents are usually tested on default screens, but older adults and people with disabilities often use larger texts, different display settings, or other accessibility features. So we ask when the screen changes, and can these AI agents still find and tap the right things? I think the slide is moving too fast.
It's
So yeah,
15.
so basically we building the access ground branch to measure like this type, because aesthetic standard European benchmark doesn't measure whether agents can operate mobile interfaces. So our benchmark solve that. So this is the our workflow of the benchmark. We get the we use Android emulator to get the sources, and then I mean, this the code base.
Seems you're cutting off. We can't really hear you.
Okay, I'll continue for him. Well, so we also build a web UI to help visualizing all these tests after they're done, as it could be kind of hard to understand them by just looking at the CSV files that it produced. So these are the 6 different profiles that we're using. So we have colorblind, baseline, combine heavy, which is a combination of enlarged text and zoom, combine moderate, and then text heavy, and then baseline, of course. So we measure this across 12 different screens, which are default apps that come with the Android emulator. We get 138 grantable targets across all profiles, and so it's 84 screenshots total. For the statistical test, we use a pooled cluster permutation, a Magnimar test, and a sign test. We use the pooled cluster permutation as our primary test, since we didn't have enough discordant pairs because of the size of the test. So doing a Magnimar test for each model wouldn't have been significant. So these are the results that we got for vision only. So as you can see, there is a degradation in performance. However, we could only prove it statistically significantly for the profiles that enlarge the text, so make it overflow. This is the cross-file comparison. So from this, you can see that passing in the hierarchy tree to the inside of the prompt does help. Ooh, and finally, this is for the hierarchy tree injector results. So what this shows is that the tree does help, but it doesn't fully mitigate the problem. And notice that we couldn't run ferret for this phase of the project. Ooh. After home correction is applied, the models that still show statistical significance are the following. Something that I want to point out is that these models are the ones that still had a lot of like headroom for improvement, and the ones that were near ceiling levels didn't show it. So a reachability issue that we encountered was that around 25% of the targets overflow outside of the screen, so they become no longer measurable or scoreable. So something else that we found is that the profiles that did degrade performance were the ones who enlarged the text, and the ones that were about density and color did not. These again some of the problems that we run into. So not all of our tests were powerful enough because of the ceiling, because most of the models were on ceiling levels. So these are the models that did have enough discordant pairs for the statistical test. And yeah, that's about it.
All right, thank you. Is the user changing the views, or is that adaptive somehow, depending on what's on the screen?
Well, so we collected our own data set, but the
Okay.
data set could be changed. So there's a part in which you could decide which apps you wanna collect the screens from. So the pipeline will do all that for you. But the profiles are set. So if you wanted to add a different profile, then you would need to do that yourself.
Okay, I see. Great, thank you. All right, moving on to Isabel and Alexandra.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So,
All right. Make sure you hit play. Great.
okay. What if we could recognize a mobility challenge before it became obvious? This summer, me and Isabel explored whether everyday movement data could identify mobility difference in Prader-Willi syndrome and support earlier intervention. But why PWS? Prader-Willi syndrome is a rare genetic disorder involving chromosome 15. It affects many systems, including muscle development and motor function, making mobility an important part of long-term independence. One major feature of PWS is hypertonia, or low muscle definition. Along with differences in muscles and body composition, it can affect strength, balance, and endurance, and walking throughout life. Research has measured these differences. Studies report slower walking, slower steps, altered cadence, and lower limb movement, along with differences in balance and postural control. So these challenges become measurable. The gap. Traditional gait and physical therapy assessments are extremely valuable, but they capture a particular moment. We wanted to understand mobility across ordinary life, during school, work, exercise, therapy, and everything in between. Our goal wasn't to diagnose PWS. We instead wanted to ask whether everyday mobility measurements could reveal meaningful differences and then translate those patterns into appropriate next steps that could support earlier interventions. We followed 4 participants with PWS and 2 adults, ranging from 7 to around 21 years old. Their different routines included school, work, exercise, walking, taekwondo, and multiple different therapies. And we looked at kind of what their different lives did and how that might impact what they were doing through all of that, especially with the age range that we did have. We have 7 days of data. For 7 consecutive days, we organized steps, active and sedentary times, walking speed, walking cadences, and movement variability. And instead of one assessment, we could examine how mobility patterns developed across the entire week. Python and Jupyter powered the analysis. Pandas organized participant data. NumPy supported calculations, and Matplotlib created visualizations, transferring daily measurements into trends, comparison, and inputs for interventional logic. The prototype combines 5 sections: a dashboard, participant profiles, methodology, intervention, logic, and literary comparison. The dashboard brings multiple measurements together so the week's most important mobility patterns are able to be understood.
Across 7 days, participants showed distinctly different mobility profiles. Steps alone didn't tell the whole story. Activity, sedentary time, walking performance, and variability together provided a much richer picture of mobility. Importantly, the PWS participants weren't simply inactive. Both had structured movement in their routines. This showed why diagnosis alone isn't enough. Age, environment, and daily activities also influence mobility data. Our analysis showed why activity and mobility aren't the same thing. Someone could be reasonably active while still showing slower walking or greater movement variability, revealing a more specific mobility challenge. We compared these mobility domains with published PWS biomechanics research. Several patterns aligned with studies reporting altered gait and postural control. With only 4 participants, however, this is alignment, not validation. Most activity trackers tell you what happens: steps, minutes, or distance. We wanted to go further. If a mobility pattern changes or becomes challenging, what evidence-informed action might be appropriate? Our intervention logic starts with the individual's pattern throughout the day, identifies a mobility domain involved, compares it with published evidence, and maps it to a conservative support category. It's guidance, not a diagnosis or prescription. For example, declining activity could prompt gradual walking goals. Prolonged inactivity could suggest movement breaks. Declining walking performance could flag strength or gait training, and increasing instability can suggest balance work or PT review. Individualization is essential. A 7-year-old in therapy shouldn't be judged against a 21-year-old athlete, and PWS varies between individuals. The better question is whether someone's own mobility pattern is changing. This was a 4-participant, 7-day exploratory pilot. It cannot establish diagnostic thresholds, treatment effectiveness, or population-wide patterns, but it demonstrates a framework that can now be tested with larger, longer data sets. The future isn't simply a sensor that counts movement. It's a system that makes movement understandable, connecting daily mobility, biomechanics, evidence, and individualized guidance so subtle changes could support conversations and intervention earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Were you targeting rather the user or the physical therapist, or both, perhaps?
Like with the app?
For the reports, yeah.
Yeah, so we use the participants and like the activities that they did on a day-to-day basis. And we used the research that we collected based off case studies of previous like people with PWS and like their mobility challenges. And I do work with some therapists regarding this syndrome, so getting their input.
Our intention was to kind of like, as we mentioned, you're not with your therapist 24/7. So it's to kind of help them have that information so they can see like, oh, when they do this, they can maybe see if they can find connection to help better tailor therapy for them in the long run.
So it's useful for both, basically.
Yeah, that is the intention, yes.
Yeah, cool. Are you making your tool open source as well?
Yes.
Okay, very cool. All right, thank you so much. Moving on to Fatima. All right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Fatima, and I'm with NSF REU. So in September 2020, Portland vanished beneath wildfire smoke. I built a digital Portland model, an agent-based model, to ask one question. If that smoke returned, which unsheltered people would have proper access? That emergency was real. Smoke covered Portland for 13 days. At its worst hour, PM 2.5 hit 56.27 micrograms per cubic meter. The air was unhealthy for 194 hours. So the model includes around 7,000 people, one for each unsheltered resident in the 2025 point in time estimate. Each person starts in a real location with their own age, walking speed, mobility status, asthma, and COPD level. Before anyone moves, the shortage is obvious. Around 2,000 shelter spaces for every around 7,000 people. That's roughly one space for every 3 residents. The question becomes whether placement can overcome the missing beds. So that kind of became my main experiment: add more beds or increase more shelters. One changes capacity and the other deals with walking distance. So which gets people more access in the time of an emergency? That's why I used an agent-based model in Repast Symphony. Instead of averaging everyone together, it follows one person at a time as each agent or person chooses a shelter. Shelter locations. So those walks follow real pedestrian streets, kind of similar to Google Maps. I repaired the broken routes and removed freeway shortcuts so every path is walkable and easily accessible all the way to the shelter from their starting encampment position. I also tested 4 different scenarios. Scenario A is today's current shelter's scenario. B is the shelter reaching full capacity. Scenario C is the same capacity but spread across 10 more new sites. And scenario D is a 10% increase for people with mobility issues. So these 4 scenarios capture the core decisions many cities face, such as capacity, placement, access, and fairness on who is getting the access, especially if they have mobility issues or other underlying conditions. So across the 93 runs in my model, an independent program reproduced exposure results exactly, and the asthma, which was kind of my negative control, didn't really affect any of the main outcomes. Scenario A result was kind of blunt based on today's situation in the Portland city. With today's system, only about 2,000 people can get indoor access in an emergency situation, which is about 3 in 10 people. So before any further changes, the main point is to just increase more shelter capacity. Scenario B tried 1 bed per person, and the admission rose to 91.6%. But 578 people still remained outside and were unable to access shelter location. And then in scenario C, I spread the capacity across 10 more new sites. Admission reached 96%, just having more access to more locations. And then in scenario D, residents with mobility limits arrived after faster walkers had already filled the shelters. With added capacity, their access gap nearly with low capacity, their access gap nearly doubled from 12.5 to 27%. So this finding led to one new additional rule, which was reserving 10% of each shelter location for slower residents, which nearly erased the gap of that percentage. So the model still has a boundary because it estimates access and exposure, but not underlying illnesses or in extreme cases, death. So shelter awareness is kind of uncertain at this point, and it could be overstated by those numbers. I also rebuilt the project in actual web space so city planners can see the streets, measured smoke, shelters, and residents together. And then every scenario is repeatable, visible, and can be played around with to see different outcomes. Putting the choices side by side, 342 extra beds matched 10 sites. 684 closed the mobility gap. A 10% reserve closes it without construction. So each policy kind of pulls like a different lever. And then I kind of began with the main question as where the shelters should go, but I ended up with who reaches the access first before it closes. So more space protects more people, and then a fair rule like just like limiting 10% to a specific population increases the access even more. Thank you so much. That was my project.
Thank you. What would you recommend the city actually does?
I think the fastest way right now with scenario A as current location would be to give 10%, limit the 10% space capacity for people with mobility issues, or if they have pets or children. That was a significant increase immediately.
Okay, great. We are having another smoke event. It's not as bad by any means as the one you used as a model for the model. Good, thank you. That's great. Muhammad is next.
Yes. Hello. Let me test my mic before. Everyone can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
We can see your slides, yep.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Mohammed Chima. This is thermal sensitivity in the Willamette River Basin. And my work is with Professor Heejun Chang at Portland University, and we're using data from Caden Sumo. So what really is thermal sensitivity? When the air warms up a degree, how much does the stream warm? We take the slope of water against air temperature. High slope means that the stream follows the air, and low slope means something's keeping it cool. We did that 14,000 times. Every reach every year fits separately for each summer month, 1999 to 2023. So 20 days of beta minimum for a fit to count. With that many slopes, you can start asking what basically explains them. So my research focus was on 2 questions: what drives thermal sensitivity, and can we trust the answers? And my second one was, where is the thermal sensitivity highest, and does it stay there for a period of time. And then to add or to do further analysis, I used 4 methods. And the first one was stepwise lasso regression tree, and the last one was random forest. Stepwise adds and drops variables until nothing improves. It's fast and readable, but greedy and unstable. It picks stream slope every single month, which looked convincing until I penalized it. Lasso makes every variable pay rent. Weak predictors get shrunk to exactly 0. Watershed area survived stepwise 3 times, and Lasso killed it every single time. But both of these still assume a straight line. A tree doesn't. It splits the data instead, and that matters. In July, Stepwise found no elevation effect at all, and the tree ranked elevation the single most important variable. One tree, though, is a fragile. A random forest, it built 1,000 models and averaged them, remembering stream slope. That card flagged every month. The forest never ranked it once. It saw through a quirk of one tree, and to bring it all together, as you can see, all 10 variables, all 4 methods. And if you start reading down the columns, the number 1 variable we had was elevation, followed closely by high cascade geology and precipitation. And it was broken out by month, and it got sharper more and more. Elevation is still unanimous in June, August, and September, with July being the only gap. And July is exactly where the relationship stopped being a straight line. Sensitivity against all 6 candidates, if you look at elevation, it bends, flattens at altitude instead of dropping steadily. That curve is what the tree methods caught and the linear ones missed. Now, one problem with all of this was the same reaches every month. The full data set fits each month on different reaches. 669 in June, 938 in August. So I kept only reaches with all 4 months every year, and that came out to be 51 reaches in total. And then the spatial patterns, which was the sensitivity by month, it had same color scale throughout, and it fades as summer goes on, 0.34 in June to 0.27 in September. And the model fits faster, and then the R squared air temperature explains less and less. By September, the linear relationship is barely holding because once snowmelt recedes, groundwater takes over. So which reaches stay hottest through all of it? And it's these ones clustered in the lower basin near Portland. Low elevation, little shade, almost no high cascade geology, no groundwater buffering anywhere in them, and they don't move. 8 of 9 show up in 2 or more months, 2 in all 4, and high sensitivity is a property of particular reaches, which is exactly what the driver's analysis predicted. That's the result I'll leave you with. So in conclusion, elevation holds up everywhere. 4 methods, both samples, both time period. Precipitation is second. Geology matters, but we can't see it well because the gauges sit on the mainstream, and that the last one is a real limitation. 51 reaches confirms, but still there's no discovery, and percent open water is generally unresolved. Lasso throws it out, random forest ranks it first. Both of these point somewhere. So in my future work, settle open water and put gouges in the headwaters. That's where the groundwater effect live and where the cold water refugees are. Then connect those reaches to actual fish data, which I was mostly interested in. And that wraps up my presentation. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Questions for Mama? What is the fish data? How would that come into play exactly? Is it the number of fish in a river or the number of
Well, my whole data was basically about like first I wanted to find out where the cold refugees are and what we can do to improve fish life.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a struggle to find exactly the data needed to be able to like find like what fishes need and everything. So that's where I'm leaning towards in the future to like make more of the data and somehow collect more data, or if there's more data available.
I see.
Yeah.
Very cool. Great, thank you. Other
Thank you.
questions for Mohammed? All right. If not, thank you again. Moving on to Kyle.
Hello. Can you see that?
Coming up, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Shoulderblade. I'm from Heritage University. I got to work with Dr. Chang this summer. This project asks about daily stream temperature range and how it varies across the Willamette River Basin. So daily stream temperature range, or DTR, is the daily maximum minus the daily minimum. And daily temperature range captures what the average might be able to, or might be hiding, which gives us another way to look at it. It's important because aquatic organisms experience the entire daily cycle, which is the daytime maximum, the nighttime minimum, and repeated fluctuation. The daily temperature range describes thermal conditions that daily mean can't. So my home shapes why I ask the research questions we have. Really big supporter of tribal knowledge and stewardship. The research questions here I asked are, where are low, middle, and high DTR stations, and which watershed settings align with wider or narrower ranges? And do spatial and seasonal patterns change when station membership is held constant? So our complete summer period required consistent observations. To make comparisons reliable, we used June through September from 1999 to 2023. And they needed at least 20 valid days. The full record appears to change substantially, but this line combines possible temporal change with changing station membership. Because different stations contribute each year, it's not a controlled estimate of the basin-wide change. The monitor basin was not constant. The problem is visible in annual coverage. From 2012 to 2023, the full data set contributes 87 and 188 stations each year. So here we detected decreases that were uncommon and localized. The hotspot map is descriptive. Dark points show lower daily temperature range and light points show higher. Higher ranges sites are scattered rather than one cluster. So even when networks changed, the seasonal pattern remained consistent. July generally had the widest DTR and September had the narrowest. A trade-off here is spatial coverage. The full network mapped 765 stations across the basin, where the fixed network retained only 38 that were constant. These vertical lines are our HC3 robust 95% intervals. To the left of 0 means that it had narrower expected DTR. To the right means it had wider, and the colors indicate the month. These are R-based results, and watershed, slope, and area were aligned with narrower DTR, and Western Cascades were aligned with wider. Here we use Spearman correlations and overlapping predictors. The hotspot map showed where DTR was high or low. This matrix asks what it aligns with. DTR correlations were weak at most 0.17, but they overlapped. Holding membership constant, the annual series moved together with a correlation of 0.724, but the fixed network averaged 0.181 degrees Celsius lower DTR. The difference also widened throughout time. The changing network increased 0.46 degrees per year compared to the 0.10 with the fixed network. So the fixed sites were warmer, but they had narrower DTR. And that was because the daily minimum averaged 1.34 degrees warmer, while the maxima was 1.15 degrees warmer. Elevation confirms that these are different monitored landscapes. The full network averaged 346 meters. The fixed network averaged 203. So controlling membership changed based on representation. The monitoring composition matters, but it's not the only driver. These are observational associations like climate, hydrology, groundwater. These also shape DTR, daily temperature range. So daily temperature range varies by season and location, and the monitoring network shapes the trend that we might be seeing. That's everything.
Thank you. Questions for Kyle? You had in your one of the visualizations, you had a burn fraction, and that was also an outlier. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, this one?
You stopped the sharing, so we can't see your slides. It was
that would be the
horizontal
matrix.
bars.
Oh, yeah, no, that one helps identify what might be driving it and what is like interactions could be causing either a wider or a narrower DTR, daily temperature range. I thought that one was our strongest visual because it helped actually answer the questions. But
what is the burn? What does burn fraction mean? Is that the amount of burned trees in that area, or?
Yeah, we used a 5-year rolling period.
Okay.
So if it had burned at all, then we would be able to count that, and that was significant with the wider daily temperature range.
Okay. Great. Good. Other questions for Kyle from the audience? Great. Well, thank you again. We're right on time. Thank you, speakers, for respecting the rules and the time. We have a short break, six-ish minutes, and we'll start again at 10 o'clock Pacific time with Brianna. So feel free to grab some coffee and whatnot, and we'll be back in 6 minutes. Brianna, are you ready to share the screen?
Yes.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. We have another session with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 presentations. Can you go full screen, or it looks a little narrow?
Yes, give me just one moment.
Oh, it's fine, but if you can, if it's easy, it will be a little larger for us.
Sorry, give me just a second.
I'll post the program again in the chat for those who joined.
Is that better?
It's coming up. Yeah, that's better. That's great. All right. Chang.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Bree, and my project was on group movie recommendation, basically how a system can recommend one movie list when more than one person's involved. It focused on retrieval, re-ranking, and what changed once the recommender was trained. So most recommender systems act like one person's making the decision, but a lot of real choices happen on a shared screen, whether it's friends picking a movie, family sharing accounts, or roommates browsing together, and that makes recommendation much harder. A group recommendation has to balance different tastes at the same time. One person might want action, another might prefer drama, and somebody else wants comedy. The system doesn't get to make 3 lists, it needs one list for everybody to choose from. The main question was whether an LLM-based re-ranker could improve group recommendations after an RL-based model retrieved candidate movies. My answer is cautious. The LLM idea is promising, but the full-scale answer still needs automated LLM access. I treated the system as a two-stage pipeline. First, MMGRDRL narrows the huge movie catalog into a smaller top 50 candidate list. Then a re-ranker only changes the order of those same candidates, so the comparison stays controlled. The data came from Movie Lens, which has individual movie ratings. Since the project is about groups, the data uses synthetic groups created from users with similar rating patterns. The final evaluation had 254 group test cases. The groups weren't just random people thrown together, they were built from users whose past ratings look similar. That matters because it creates a more realistic group preference setting than completely random groups with no shared movie taste. MMGRDRL is the main recommender model. At a high level, it learns from ratings, represents the group and its history, scores possible movies, and produces a ranked top 50 list that later methods can re-rank or compare against. An important update is that the final experiment used 1,000 training epochs on ORCA with GPU support. Early results came from a short 5-episode debugging run, which was useful for testing the pipeline, but not enough for final claims. The 1,000 epoch training changed the scale of the results. In the debugging run, only 29 test cases had a true movie in the top 50. After proper training, that increased to 190 cases, which is a major difference, as you can tell. The final top 50 coverage was 190 out of 254 group test cases, or about 74.8%. This is important because a re-ranker can't rescue a correct movie if the retrieval model never actually gave it that movie. For the re-ranking comparison, I kept the candidate set fixed. Both methods received the exact same 50 movies from the recommender. That means the experiment measures ranking quality, not whether one method saw easier or better candidates. When I say MMGRDRL plus popularity, I don't mean a separate model was trained. I used the same model's top 50 candidates, then reordered them with a hybrid score, combining the recommender score and training data popularity. I measured the rankings with Precision, Recall, and NDCG at 5 and 10. Since each test case has a true movie, Recall acts like hit rate. NDCG adds another layer by rewarding the true movie for appearing higher. The clearest improvement I saw was at top 10. Recall at 10 increased, as you can see, along with NDCG at 10. So popularity helped push some relevant movies higher within the top 10, where users are still pretty likely to look. Top 5 was a bit more mixed. Precision at 5 and Recall at 5 were slightly lower with popularity, while NDCG at 5 was basically the same. So popularity was helpful, but not universally better at every cutoff or every part of the ranking. Overall, popularity worked best at the top 10 re-ranking signal. It didn't improve everything, but it gave a measurable gain where recommendation lists are still short enough to matter. That makes a strong baseline for future LLM comparison. The LLM re-ranker showed promise in a smaller pilot, but the final trained model produced 190 re-rankable cases. Running all those manually, I realized isn't realistic. A full comparison needs API access, which I'm currently working on. So my answer to the research question is honest and cautious. LLM re-ranking looks promising, but I can't claim a full-scale win yet. What I can claim is a final working pipeline and a strong popularity baseline. Overall, this project taught me how much recommendation quality depends on the whole pipeline, as in data, training, retrieval, and re-ranking. There's still a lot to be done, but I'm excited to share that I'll be continuing this project and working with my mentor as she finishes her thesis. So that's all for me. I can take any questions if you guys have them.
Thank you. Questions for Bree? Did you compare with any other methodology or published results?
So the MMGRDRL that I'm speaking about that I did compare against, that's directly from my mentor. well, not the professor, her PhD student that I've been working alongside this summer.
Okay.
She has two prior works that came before that, and she kind of built up on that. So earlier in the research, I was comparing against those, but she really wanted me to focus on improving the MMGRDRL because I think that's what she's going to be working on the remainder of her thesis. And I'm
Right.
going to be helping her with that and her publications for that as well. So I think she really wanted to focus on that. But I did compare against those others before, and it kind of blew them out of the water. So I didn't really want to.
Okay. Good. That's great. Yeah. Comparisons are an integral part of science, so that's good that you've done that. Great. Other questions for Bree? If not, we'll move on to Java. Who worked with John Lipor?
Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm Java. I'm a rising junior at Virginia Tech, and this summer I built a deep learning model that turns raw geophysical data into a map where the Great Basin is most likely to have untapped geothermal energy. So geothermal energy is clean, it's renewable, and it's always on. But unlike solar or wind energy, it does not depend on weather or time of day. So that makes it a pretty strong partner for carbon neutral power grids. But the easy geothermal systems, which are the ones that have like hot springs or steam vents at the surface, they're mostly already found since they're pretty like open to the human eye. But what remains are the blind systems that show no surface signs at all. Those are hidden underground. And so finding a blind system usually means drilling test wells, and each one is pretty costly, millions of dollars, and there's also no guarantee of success. So exploration is pretty slow and it's an expensive guessing game. So the goal of this project was essentially to replace guesswork with a data-driven map. We wanted so for every 100 by 100 meter patch of the Great Basin, we wanted to predict a favorability score on how likely that spot is to hold geothermal resources. And so we start with a 16-layer stack of geophysical data that includes things like heat flow, gravity, faults, and rock types that cover the entire Great Basin at 100-meter resolution. So you can kind of think of it as like a very detailed, tall image. And that stack is basically an image. So we treat favorability prediction like image segmentation. So it's the same task used to label every pixel of a photo. And so our model is a UNet, which is a deep neural network that's built exactly for this. To know if UNet is actually good, we compare it to our baseline approaches XGBoost, which is a decision tree model, and the approach that is used in the most like recently published version of this work and has the same data and same pipeline. And so we tested both models on regions that they never saw during training, and then we added buffer zones so that nearby pixels couldn't leak information into other zones. And then we checked, do the models flag the Great Basin's 27 known geothermal systems as favorable? And because these models are pretty sensitive to random starting conditions, we don't train once. We actually train the model 120 times and then look at the average all run on the GPU cluster, the ORCA cluster. And so here's the UNet's favorability map for the entire Great Basin. So blue shows low favorability and red shows high on the same scale that was used in published geothermal maps. And then this is XGBoost with the same scale in the same region. And so the two mostly agree on where the hot spots are, but XGBoost predictions span a wider range, which is part of the reason, I guess, why this map has some more red spots. So the red dots on this map are the confirmed existing geothermal power plants that have already been shown. Most of them sit right on top of the high favorability regions in both maps. So that's a pretty strong sign that both models are actually learning something real. So scored against the 27 known systems, XGBoost had an AUC of around like 94% and UNet was 90%. So both are pretty strong, but UNet was the newer approach and it's still being fine-tuned, so the gap was expected. It's not necessarily a flaw. And they didn't necessarily agree everywhere. So here you can see in the Northeast region, like if you kind of take a look in the bottom left-ish or even just the left side in general, they aren't necessarily the same. One Yeah, so they weren't necessarily the same, but disagreeing is not necessarily a problem. It's actually showing that we're learning. So no model is really right or wrong. They just pick up on different patterns and for the same exact data. And so for the USGS scientists who have to use these maps, maps are not really a final answer. It's more of a short list to point them into the right direction of the unexplored areas that they might want to take a closer look at before they commit to expensive drilling. So some limits, there are still like edge artifacts to clean up and obviously no like technology has its limits. So no model output is going to replace a geologist's judgment. So this still is just good exploration, but not necessarily a replacement for geologists. And zooming out, this work is essentially one smaller piece of a bigger goal, using data science to make carbon neutral energy sources easier and cheaper to find. And some of the next steps include validating predictions against the new field data. And then I wanted to thank my mentor, Dr. Lipor, and to my partner, Joe, and to Dr. Tusher for allowing me to have an opportunity in this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Java?
Yeah, Java, nice job with your talk. Sorry. Oh, okay, good microphone. Yeah, nice job with your talk. I'm wondering if you could do something to improve the AUC. What do you think would be the right next step?
Definitely playing around with like the class weights and the patch size. I tried a little bit on Tuesday and Wednesday to play with different patches, but it seemed, at least at the direction I was going, that the AUC was getting worse when I put the class weights lower. So I'm gonna try going in the opposite direction to see if we'll have a positive effect on the AUC.
Nice.
Excellent. Other questions for John? Good. Thank you again. Darcy is up next. We can see your presenter notes now. And I think you're muted still. We can't hear you if you're saying something.
How's that?
Okay, better.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I'm Darcy Van Pelt, and I modeled traffic pollution in Portland. I tried to answer one question. When a road closes, what happens to the pollution? Nitrogen dioxide comes out of tailpipes and makes asthma worse. You think we'd measure it? Portland has 2 regulatory monitors for the entire metro, only 2. So almost everything we know is modeled, not measured. How do we model it? The standard approach, the one that Dr. Rao's team published for Portland, predicts pollution from fixed facts about a neighborhood: road type, population, distance to a highway. It's good, it's used everywhere, and it never sees a car move. Which means this: if we close a road, none of those facts change. It's the same street, same people, same jobs, so the map can't move. It predicts the same pollution on a street with no cars. That's the blind spot. I did the opposite. Instead of describing neighborhoods, I simulated the cars. Every single vehicle, its own decision maker. It plans a route, follows the car ahead, brakes, cues, and accelerates. Here they are at Southeast 21st and Division. This is the model running. Every dot is one car. 16,500 of them across the whole Portland metro. The green cars are moving, the red are stopped, and downtown is that bright cluster there in the middle. Here you can watch close up as the cues stack up at the red lights and release. That's the whole point. Exhaust doesn't spread evenly along a street. It comes out where the cars idle and accelerate. Red is stopped, green is moving, and yellow is in between. The network is 40 kilometers across, and the trips are not invented. They come from federal commute records, where people actually live and work. 531,000 real commuter journeys feed it. Out of that motion comes a map, street by street. This is modeled nitrogen dioxide for 1 simulated hour. Freeways in downtown are brightest. Brighter means more pollution on that street. And there's a second map for noise. Now the experiment. I close 150 meters of Southeast Powell and rerun the exact same trips. Same drivers, same destinations. The only change is one blocked street. The orange box is the closure. Here's what the cars do. Open and then closed. You can watch them leave Powell and stack onto Division and Hallgate, the parallel streets. Nobody vanishes, everyone still has somewhere to be. Red is stopped traffic, and green is traffic that's still moving. And the pollution follows them. This is the same window, open and then closed. The closed stretch goes dark, and the streets around it light up when it does. Brighter a street, the more pollution it is getting. Near the closed stretch, the modeled nitrogen dioxide falls 81%. I ran it 12 times with different random traffic. No run came in below 69% or above 88%, so it's not a fluke. But here's the part that matters. Across the whole network, the total stays within 2% either direction. It doesn't go away. It just moves onto other people's streets, and 12 out of 12 agree. Powell's loss becomes Division and Holgate's gain. And it reaches further than I expected. Drivers reroute long before they get near the block stretch, so roads well upstream lose traffic too. My old smaller study area couldn't see that. The yellow circle is 3.4 kilometers out. Traffic makes noise too. This is the same closure and the same noise surface. Powell drops a little, but a quiet residential street gets about 2/3 louder. The harm is bigger than the relief. Orange streets are loud, and purple streets are quiet. Is the simulation actually adding knowledge? I fed my traffic into Dr. Rao's method against her 332 measured sites. Accuracy went up. Pink is with my traffic. It wins every time. 2 things didn't work though. My numbers were 4 times too high until I fixed my fleet. My first emission model made every car a diesel. And it only helps in the summer. In the winter, home heating dominates and the static map already covers it. Mine does not add enough to count in the winter. Here they are side by side. A static map stays frozen when a road closes. A model made of cars shows you where the pollution went and whose street it went to. Same closure, same color scale, only one of them responds. Closures aren't hypothetical. Bridge repairs, construction, emergencies. Right now, nobody tells that the street tells the street that inherits the traffic. This is a way to find out in advance. Thanks to Christoph, to Nick, and to all of you.
Thank you. Questions for Darcy? You also looked into noise. You want to say something about that?
Like what?
Well, you mentioned that in the winter the heating dominates your
yeah, there's just so much more
data.
pollution.
Right, but
Yeah.
for noise, you could still use your model in the winter too.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Right, because you wouldn't have a heat problem, right? Anyway, I think
Right.
that could be something for your to-do list.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Other questions for Darcy?
I'm curious if you modeled closure of I-5 southbound, since that's actually going to happen very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on that right now, actually. It should be running on ORCA right now, I think, because I want to be able to compare it when it does close. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, actually.
Cool. That should be interesting to see.
Yeah. Nick had that idea. And so Darcy is trying to model that closure that is coming up, and that will be a nice, interesting playground.
And thank you again for that, Nick.
Great. All right, moving on to Ivana.
Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you great, yeah.
Awesome. So let's get started. Okay. Let me share my screen. Can everybody see the presentation okay?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's doing something.
Oh, it's just loading, probably.
Okay, it's loading, yeah. Now we can see it.
Okay. Sounds good. And then I'll put it on every 15 seconds. And we'll play. So hello everybody, my name is Ivana, and today I'll be discussing my summer research project. I'm from Victor Valley College, and I worked with Dr. Hartzell on modeling transpiration on green roof plants. So we're focusing on the relationship between plants' water usage under various weather conditions. And this is important because previously in July 2021, heat rose to 115 degrees and it harmed a lot of plants, depriving them of the water they need to live. So we wanted to do 3 goals. We wanted to first compare 2 models that would simulate plants' water usage, see the effectiveness of it under different weather conditions, and then publish the results on a website with the weather data. So the parameters we used is I studied Idaho fescue, buffalo grass, and sedum album on the first week of April, May, and July, so the first 5 days. We simulated each plant with sand set as the default, and we used local weather data. So this is a good infographic that kind of explains each plant that I studied. And they're different types. So there's the sedum, the C3 grasses, and C4 grasses. And I'll be going over each of them in starting Idaho fescue. So it's a C3 plant. So it takes in, it doesn't take as much, it takes in not as much water as other plants. It can survive drought for weeks. And then buffalo grass is a C4 plant. It uses a lot more water than other types of plants. And it has a good cooling effect, meaning it offsets the heat. And then sedum album, it's a cam plant, so it can survive the highest drought survival rate. So you'll see with the graphs in a minute just what that looks like. So one of the models we used to compare was the Penman-Monteith model, specifically the FAO model, which is the classic one. It's been adapted to other models, and it takes in weather data to calculate how plants use water through evapotranspiration. And it's originally designed for well-watered grasses, but it's been adapted time and time again for many other models for irrigation. So the Photo3 model is the second model we decided to compare. It helps calculate the carbon the plants use for photosynthesis, your soil moisture, water usage, and much more. And it visualizes each with a graph, so those are some examples down below. And it's a great way to study the behavior of various plants under different weather conditions and how it stores water. So now we're going to take a look at some of the results as well. Starting with Idaho fescue, on the left is our Penman-Monteith, on the right is our Photo3, and the biggest changes you'll notice is between the second and third day. The higher the transpiration rate, the more it takes in water, more water loss we're experiencing. And it seems with the Idaho fescue, C3 plant, that the higher transpiration rates it's kind of like you have to look at the side. It's like higher calculated on the Photo3 model. And then with the buffalo grass, you'll notice as well the changes are between the 3rd and 4th day in April. And when there's more heavier rainfall and it's not losing as much water. And then in July, you'll see it's using much more water. And the change is kind of like 25% lower with the Penman-Monteith than the Photo3. They're kind of similar, but there are differences, and Penman-Monteith works better with grass. And then with sedum album, you'll notice that there are slight differences between the first and second day. And yeah. And then July, because it's the hottest, it's always been the trend with penman monteith is that it's slightly lower than the photo 3. And then, yeah, it's taking in more water. So the most effective model based on results was the photo 3. It's because it takes in the entire plant profile and it includes like specifics to the species, which is something the penman model doesn't do. It kind of generalizes the plants. And the results of the project, we created a website. I'm adding the finishing touches, but yeah, you'll see the weather data available on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Ivana? Is your website going to give recommendations for future roof users?
No, but that would be a great idea to add something specific so people know which green roof to plant, since it has a lot of cooling effects and benefits to the environment. That could be something I can expand on after the project's over too.
I think that'd be cool, yeah, if you could, enter your address basically, and then it gives you suggestions for plants, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Great. Other questions? Good. All right. We have next up Munia and Alex.
Hello, can you see my screen?
Okay, it's coming up. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry, can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. Hello, I'm Munya Hamid from Arizona State University. My partner Alex Kim and I worked on an altREU project, which is the development of an open source obstructive sleep apnea device. Obstructive sleep apnea is the most common type of sleep apnea where the throat muscles relax and block the airway. Symptoms include loud snoring, daytime sleepiness, high blood pressure, and mood changes. The Apnea-Hypopnea Index is a scale to help providers diagnose and rank the severity of OSA. Apneas are pauses in breathing, while hypopneas are a blockage of airflow. AHI tracks how many times these events occur per hour, with more events dictating severe sleep apnea. One of the main current methods of diagnosis is in-lab polysomnography, which is an overnight sleep study that tracks breathing patterns, blood oxygen levels, and activities of the heart and brain. The study also costs between $1,000 to $3,500 without insurance and often has long wait times. Other methods include at-home sleep tests such as the RedMed Apnea Link Air, which costs around $250, and the WatchPat, an FDA-cleared test that costs around $120, but it's only one use and disposable. The Galaxy Ring is the first FDA-cleared over-the-counter ring device for sleep apnea risk detection. However, this is not a diagnosis and is at a steep price of almost $400 with less accuracy as other devices on the market. Sleep apnea is a problem because 80 to 90% of cases go undiagnosed and affects 936 million adults. It can also increase risk of heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome. Sleep apnea also affects older men and people with higher BMI, but it also affects those in rural areas. Only 15% of rural patients received a referral for further testing compared to 20% of urban patients. With that, we developed a foundation for a sleep apnea monitoring system. With an ESP32C3 as a body, we were able to upload code and easily collect data when adding sensors such as max 30102 for heart rate, contact microphone, and a galvanic skin response sensor. So why does it matter? There is no sleep monitoring system that is open source. Being open source allows data in the power of the user and it's not being sent to a third party. Parts can be easily replaceable and cheap for the average person, with the system being only $30. The deliverables we created are all located on GitHub. We have created a part source list, a GitHub hosted webpage, which is seen on the right side, code for the REU and the open SCAD model of the device's housing. We wanted everything to be public and open so people could alter and improve for what's best for them. We went the route of purchasing most of the hardware from marketplaces that is readily accessible, such as AliExpress or Amazon. This flexible platform also allows for future additions like a gyroscope, accelerometer, and a second microphone. The biomarkers for sleep apnea include SpO2, which is blood oxygen saturation, heart rate, and the galvanic skin response, which measures sweat gland activity. The microphone picks up the snoring sounds, and every data point was backed by a study, as we needed a comprehensive understanding of the body's response to OSA. The data here showcases the ESP32 communicating with the SD card. It then makes a CSV for every session that the user activates. It has measurements, time elapsed, raw data, and flags like heart rate not detected. CSV was chosen due to its accessibility. The CAD model was a major roadblock to the project. We had to measure every part, model the casing, and wait for printing to complete. This was a constant 3 to 5 day cycle, and we had 4 revisions. We also modeled using OpenSCAD, which allows programmers to edit the model much easier than a parametric CAD software. While a prototype is able to collect data, we have no algorithm to diagnose OSA. At the start, we were warned that this would be an issue, and it still stands true. Although there is data about sleep apnea, it does not use our sensors, so the best we can do is extrapolate their data onto ours. The design needs to be more streamlined for ease of community adoption. Having users hand wire and solder parts is not very accessible. So a possible another PCB where users can just plug in the sensors would be much more preferred. Finally, we also need to make a stronger platform for the device. Having tutorials will allow for more users to create this device, and thus more data that we can use for the creation of the algorithm. Thank you. Even though we couldn't complete the algorithm, hopefully the system allows for more streamlined sleep studies, patient-broad data, and awareness. We'd like to thank the altREU program and the faculty for this opportunity.
Thank you. Questions? Where can we download everything?
Yeah, so we have the GitHub available to everyone. We included like the website too. So I think we can like share, it's like open source and available and everything on GitHub. So it's open to everyone.
That's great. Are you concerned about, safety and liability if, something doesn't work?
Yeah, so that is definitely like a big part of the wiring problem too that we were having, because the patients probably won't have like soldering experience or wiring experience, which is why that is definitely something that we were looking to like improve on, to see like how can it be easily like built. And then when it does come in contact with a person's body, that is also something that we haven't tried yet. We haven't done like a sleep study on ourselves or on a participant. So that is something that we want to make sure that if we continue this project later on, that if it's like compatible with its skin, and then also making sure that none of the wires disconnect and it's dangerous.
Yeah. Definitely add a disclaimer.
Yeah.
As well. Good. That's great. Thank you. All right. Moving on to Sagar.
Hello. Yeah, let me share my screen real quick. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yep.
Okay. Let me just. Okay. Oops. Okay. So hi, I'm Sagar. In the Tushar lab, we're exploring a pretty unusual idea, and that's if we can use everyday materials to help process information. This summer, we decided to test honey. So we're concerned with a specific computing method called physical RC. And what happens here is that we use the material's natural dynamics as part of computation, in which we basically apply inputs let the material transform it in some way, and then interpret its response. Now, a reservoir needs two key properties, and that's fading memory and nonlinearity. It must keep track of recent information, but also transform these input in a way a readout layer can distinguish. And so honey is a promising reservoir, and that's because it's viscoelastic. So its mechanical response is actually preserved when it's deformed. So this history dependence could provide the fading memory we're looking for and the key property a reservoir computer requires. So this summer, we built a honey-based physical reservoir computer to test this idea. Could honey's response help process information? And can its response and properties explain its computational performance? So we repurposed an open source rheometer to apply controlled rotational inputs to honey, measure the force it exerts in its response, and this basically gives us the time-dependent mechanical signal that becomes the state of our physical reservoir. So we send a variable input into the system, record the honey's response, and use a simple trained readout to interpret that response. Now the question is whether this honey actually transforms this input in a useful way. So we test this on some RC benchmarks like NARMA, memory capacity, or XOR classification. And these tasks basically help us do pattern classification from changing inputs, help us process nonlinear information, and see if it has that short-term memory. So we're also characterizing the honey mechanically, determining its relaxation behavior and determining if its fractional order models can describe it and its history-dependent response. So this will let us compare and see if these physical properties predict computation. Now, testing temperatures and types is also important because temperature changes its relaxation, and we want to see if that physical change is affecting that computation. And so we first tested whether different honeys responded differently, even with the same motor input. Some responses showed some simpler outputs, but others had a more time-dependent behavior. Now we're seeing how this is going to affect computation. We're also measuring how quickly honey relaxes after it's disturbed. This reflects the fading memory we were discussing, and it has to keep recent inputs long enough to be useful, but not distant past inputs forever, which is important for a reservoir. We use memory capacity we could test this, and we basically give honey past inputs and train it and supervise it by giving it the correct answer of what past inputs were based on the current state. And then we train it on new data. Now, memory alone isn't enough. Our early NARMA results show that honey's physical response can support nonlinear computation, but performance usually decreases on higher orders. We're also asking whether honey's physical properties can predict its computational performance by comparing relaxation, fractional behavior, and even nonlinear responses with the benchmark results we're getting so far. And so far, honey has shown us some rich time-dependent mechanical responses, but now we're going to test whether those dynamics are giving us useful memory and nonlinearity for computation, how much we can knob that and how useful that is. So if the properties of a material are measurable and we could predict performance, we could select better reservoir materials like unconventional materials, instead of just guessing and doing trial and error to see which one works. Now, the bigger idea is that this computation doesn't need to happen only in conventional electronics. Materials with their own memory and dynamics also process these information at a much lower cost compared to digital circuits. Now, future work is also something we're doing right now, is testing more honeys, temperatures, and benchmark tasks to see whether properties like relaxation and fractional behavior will predict which materials perform best as reservoirs. And so the question is, can honey compute? Well, so far we've been able to see its memory and nonlinear behavior. Honey isn't smart, but it's part of the computational process. And so understanding these properties could help us better design physical reservoir computers. So that wraps up my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sagar. Questions? What other viscoelastic materials are you thinking about testing here?
Well, there's some certain type of gels. I'm not sure. I haven't gone to this part yet, but different types of honey for now.
Okay.
But yeah, we haven't looked into that deeper end yet. But,
yeah, honey's a good start.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. If not, Tanner is next.
Hey.
I'm not sure we can hear you, Tanner.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
No, we can. Okay, fine.
Okay.
I thought you said something.
Cool. You can see all good?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is my name is Tanner, and my project is a benchmarking framework for memristive crossbars using reservoir computing. Specifically, I'm interested in seeing what happens when we change the device model while keeping all their operating conditions identical. So if you look at the literature today, most benchmarking focuses on the workload itself. A device model is usually chosen and then treated as part of the implementation, which can neglect performance variations caused by the specific model. And so my project takes a pass at revealing those effects. The framework is pretty easily broken down into a few key parts: reservoir computer, a readout layer, and then a SPICE crossbar, and just metrics for comparing. I'm using a type of recurrent neural network called the reservoir computer. That is interesting because when the reservoir is created, the internal connections are randomly initialized, and then we don't train them. And instead, we train a linear readout layer using ridge regression. And so this layer is responsible for mapping the high dimensional and nonlinear reservoir dynamics into a target output space, basically just something that we can read. So this makes the readout layer an interesting place to experiment with hardware, because mathematically it's just vector matrix multiplication. So instead of trying to simulate the whole reservoir on hardware, I can replace just the one computation and still see those variations, which is where a memristor comes in. And these are basically just resistive devices whose conductance depends on its previous electrical state. And this means they can potentially store information and perform computation in the same spot. And they can be arranged into crossbar topologies with rows running in one direction and columns in the perpendicular direction, and then one of these devices at every cross point. And so when voltages are applied to the rows, Kirchhoff's current law sums the resulting currents along each column. And so the physics of the circuit effectively performs a vector matrix multiplication in parallel. And this maps very naturally onto the reservoir readout. The reservoir states become row voltages, the trained readout weights become the device conductances, and then the resulting column currents represent the predicted outputs. There is one complication, however, where neural network weights can be positive or negative, while conductances cannot. So the most common way to handle that is with differential pairs, where each logical output gets a positive and a negative column. So after training the reservoir using ridge regression, my framework reads those trained weights and then converts them into initial device resistances. And that gives the SPICE crossbar approximately the same readout that the software reservoir learned. The framework then generates a SPICE circuit containing the crossbar and drives it with the reservoir state, runs the simulation with ngSpice, reads the column voltages, and then converts those back into readable predictions. So the important part is that the process is automated, and I can keep the reservoir states, the weights, the topology, and input signals identical, and then just swap what device sub-circuit is placed at every crosspoint. And so right now I've been testing with several models that I just have listed here. I'm using a fixed or like a normal resistor as a baseline to more easily distinguish the effects of the memristor model. So even at this stage, the results are interesting. In like short tests, the models still all show variations in prediction error. I've seen like the fixed resistor and the Persian model behave similarly, while HB and Yakopkik usually have higher error. And one of the important things to note about memristors is they don't necessarily stay at the initial resistance I used to encode a weight. The reservoir states are voltages, so reading the crossbar can actually change the state of the device, which you can see in the HP model. Memristors are attractive though because their conductance can change, which means that we can program them. So instead of fabricating a crossbar with one exact fixed resistance per weight, we can program each device to the resistance that we need. But ultimately, the goal isn't to show that one memristor model is universally better than another. Different models are designed to capture different device behaviors and make different assumptions about the underlying physics. And the goal of the framework really is to make the device model itself a controlled experimental variable so that we can measure how those modeling choices affect the same computing system. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Tanner?
I think you just did a very good job explaining all that. That was a really good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
I had a question for Tanner. What was differential pairs you discussed in your slides?
Yeah, so I had to do it quick, but basically, if you have like two outputs in for your readout, the crossbar actually has 4 columns because you can't have negative weights. So you have a positive column and then a negative column. And then at the output, they're just summed together.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you say something about scalability? How large of a crossbar could you simulate?
Yeah, so I have had problems scaling the reservoir itself, which naturally scales the crossbar,
Right, yeah.
where the outputs will just converge to 0. And I'm kind of hoping that's just like a memory allocation error or something.
Okay.
So I have seen issues with that. But with testing, I've gone up to like 800 neurons reservoir size, and it's worked fine.
Could you make it 10,000, do you think?
So where I've seen the problems with scaling is usually past like 1,000 neurons.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is the reservoir size, which I guess maps to the crossbar.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. Thank you. Other questions for Tanner? All right, that ends our second session. We have a 11-minute break. We'll continue at 11 Pacific time with Kevin. All right. Talk to you soon. Kevin, are you ready to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm ready to share my screen.
All right, let's
start
by doing that so we can.
Okay, you should be able to see it now.
It's coming up. Yeah. Let's give it another minute though, so folks can come back. We can see your notes right now.
Yeah, that's.
Can you try?
I just haven't started it yet.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
Yeah. All right, good. Welcome back. We have session 3 with I think one talk less. So we should be able to have a little bit of a bigger break, and then we have an even larger break in session 4. So our first presenter is Kevin.
Alrighty, let me just get it all set up. Hello, I'm Caden. This summer, I built a software simulator for a brain-inspired crossbar. Instead of building physical chips, we can simulate the network's behavior with a low-cost simulation. The hardware I studied is called a crossbar array. It's designed to perform analog vector matrix multiplication, which is much more efficient than traditional computers, making it an exciting area of AI research. The problem is that real hardware isn't perfect, devices aren't identical, wires have resistance, components wear out over time, and electrical current doesn't always flow exactly where we expect it to. Most simulations assume perfect hardware. That makes designing these systems easier, but it also means we don't know how much real-world imperfections will affect performance across the network. My project focused on answering a simple question: which hardware imperfections matter the most, and which ones only have a small impact on the final accuracy? The answer can reveal relationships about what drives this behavior. To answer that question, I built a Python simulation framework that models mixed device crossbar arrays using memristors and memcapacitors, while allowing different imperfections to be enabled independently. That meant I could introduce one imperfection at a time, run the same neural network repeatedly, and directly compare how each hardware effect changed the final inference accuracy in contrast to other types of devices. I modeled several non-ideal behaviors, including device variability, parasitic wire resistance, sneak path currents, and endurance degradation, all within the same simulation framework with independent activations. I explored a fractional order memcapacitor model as an extension to the simulator. It worked as expected, but the additional computation required meant that the standard model was used for the larger experiments. Once everything was working, I could perform automated parameter sweeps, testing different hardware conditions, and collecting enough data to meaningfully identify performance trends and find associations between non-ideal behaviors. One of the first results was that increasing device variability across all devices gradually reduced inference accuracy, although the neural network remained surprisingly resilient to moderate levels of variation. I also measured how parasitic resistance affected the crossbar. As resistance increased, the voltage drops across the wires made it harder for the network to produce accurate outputs. Sneak path currents were also enabled during these tests. The most interesting result involves sneak path currents. These are unwanted current paths that appear because electricity can flow through neighboring devices instead of only the intended one, meaning the VMM is not working. What I found was that parasitic resistance and sneak path currents are closely connected. As one became more significant, the other one became more severe, amplifying their combined effect. Notice how both networks are equivalent without parasitic wire resistance. The relationship was difficult to see without simulation because it emerges from many electrical interactions happening throughout the entire crossbar rather than just from a single device. These experiments produce quantitative results instead of guesses. Rather than assuming which hardware problems matter the most, designers can compare their effects using measurable data. This simulation can help researchers prioritize design related to minimizing parasitic resistance, like the interconnects on a crossbar. If one source of error has a much larger impact than the other, they can focus their effort where it will make the biggest difference. Beyond this project, this simulator can also be extended to evaluate future device models, larger neural networks, and additional hardware effects without building new physical prototypes. For me, this project combines software engineering, numerical modeling, and machine learning into a single research tool that supports the design of future neuromorphic computing systems. Thank you. I hope this showed how software simulation can help us understand real hardware, reduce development costs, and guide better designs before the first chip is ever built. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Questions? So Tanner used NG Spice. What Spice version did you use?
So at the very start of this project, I was doing some initial testing with Zeiss, that framework that you had mentioned to me.
Yeah.
And I had no problems with it, and it was actually a pretty good framework. It wasn't easy to translate between Python and the Spice framework, so I just ended up doing it all in Python.
Okay. But you could go back, you think, to Spice?
Oh, for sure. I could go back, but yeah, I'm just not too interested in translating the like the output from those netlists back into Python. I thought it might be a little bit easier just to have it all inside Python and have it all be working locally.
Sure. Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Cool.
Great.
Thank you.
Other question. All right, we have Lucas next.
Hi guys. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Okay, hi everyone, my name is Lucas, and for my summer research work, I studied critical behavior in optimally performing echo state networks. In the next few slides, I'll briefly describe what an echo state network is, criticality, and the importance relation between the two. So an echo state network is a recurrent neural network that responds to input signals. The input signals are then transformed into higher dimensional space via a pool of simulated neurons, and the response is then collected to train a readout layer. The neurons that respond to input can operate in one of three characteristic states. They are ordered, critical, and chaotic. The critical state is what we care about, what we're going to be talking about. And this is because in this state, the neurons exhibit high levels of dynamic range. And this is theoretically where echo state networks work the best. So this dynamic behavior at the critical point is also characterized by scale and variance. So I'm sure most of you have heard of or know what fractals are, but the idea is that you can zoom in or out as much as you'd like, and you always find infinitely complex shapes and sizes. So criticality matters because we get the most interesting dynamic behavior, and this means we get the most information at this state. And so this is good for learning because we get the most information. And so the question we're asking is whether critical behavior shows up consistently in optimally performing echo state networks. So how do we show critical behavior? Well, we have to show, or one way we can do it is by showing scale and variance in the network. And so I'll talk a little bit about how we can do that in the next few slides. So one approach to do this is to measure event sizes within the network called avalanches. This visual represents an avalanche occurring over 6 time steps. On the far left, the avalanche begins, followed by a cascade of activity that eventually dies out. In subcritical networks, avalanches are short and die off quickly, whereas in supercritical networks, they expand. But in a critical network, they exist somewhere in between. We get a range of small and large events. So we'll be looking at 2 representations of this. We'll be plotting probability of avalanche sizes and the probability of avalanche duration. And so in theory, the avalanche size and duration distribution should follow power law behavior when plotted on a logarithmic scale, which should look something like this. So this is kind of what we want to see. It's important to note that echo state networks are randomly initialized. So while we're finding hyperparameters to guide the behavior of the networks, we do have a slightly indeterminate output. And so to compensate for this, we do 100 runs for each trial. And so because of this random initialization, we do get reservoirs that fail. And so I just wanted to point that out there. So for predicting the Lorenz chaotic time series, we do get a very characteristic looking power law. So this means that optimal performance for that task is critical. Sorry. For Mackie-Glass, we still see criticality, although it's slightly less, and only 11% of the reservoirs fail in this test. For the Santa Fe laser, we see much different behavior, and also 86% of the initialized reservoirs fail for this task. And lastly, for the Rosler task, we see less frequent activity for larger avalanche sizes, and 62% of the initializations fail. So what does this mean? Well, the goal was to see whether optimally tuned reservoirs exhibit critical behavior over a range of tasks, and we observed that this is not necessarily the case for all tasks. This suggests that optimal task performance alone does not guarantee that a reservoir is operating at criticality. However, obviously more rigorous testing should be performed. There should be more testing on a wider range of tasks. So yeah, thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you. Questions for Lucas?
I hope that was an improvement from the practice run.
Yes. That's great. Questions? What can you say about the importance for like physical materials? What materials would you look for that would actually meet your criteria?
Physical materials, I'm not sure. I don't know anything about that. That would be interesting to look into. But I guess I was just looking at the theoretical critical point across different tasks. Yeah.
Sure. Fair enough. Yeah. I think there's a question of, measuring that with an actual physical system, and how would you, do what you've done in simulation? How would you do that with an actual physical material? It could be honey, like we've seen with Sagar's talk.
Right. Yeah.
Is honey at the critical stage or line?
Right. That would be interesting. For Mohammed's project, we're gonna see where his framework sort of lands on the criticality spectrum. So that might be interesting as well.
Great. That's a perfect segue into Mohammed's talk.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I planned that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. I appreciate that segue. Makes it easier for me. Let me share my screen for you guys.
Oh.
Lucas, can you unshare?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, looks great.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mohammed, and I'll be talking about audio peripheral models. So when a cochlear implant processes sound, it must decide what information to preserve and what information to discard. And the traditional CI approaches perform well for speech in isolation, but perform poorly for music perception and for speech in noisy environments. A sound signal can be decomposed into two components. The envelope describes the slow variation in amplitude over time, and the TFS describes the rapid oscillations contained within that envelope. So in current implant coding strategies such as ACE or CIS, they transmit the envelope across roughly 20 electrodes and discard most of the temporal fine structure. And as such, the pitch information required for music perception and for separating voices is largely unavailable to the user. And so we'll be exploring the Bruce-Zeleny model. An alternative approach replaces the signal processing front end with a biophysical model of the inner ear. And this approach has been demonstrated to preserve more of the original signal, but requires solving over 100 differential equations in lockstep. So the computational cost of that model makes it unsuitable for a wearable device. But in order to address this work investigated whether a network of spiking neurons could reproduce the output of that model at a lower energy or time cost. So the target of this reproduction is the neurogram, a 40-channel representation of the auditory nerve firing rate produced by the Bruce model. The network was trained to output these 40 channels given the original audio signal. To evaluate the network, the envelope and temporal fine structure must be scored separately. This is accomplished by presenting the stimulus at two polarities, the original and inverted. The sum of the two responses isolates the envelope, and the differences isolates the temporal fine structure. The initial hypothesis concerned the neuron model. Auditory nerve fibers exhibit power law adaptation, and as such, it was thought that fractional order Agrawal-Lyatnikov leaking integrate fire neurons would better capture that temporal fine structure. This prediction was tested across 25 runs of 5 random seeds, and the result was found to be the exact opposite. The fractional neurons improved the envelope in every run and significantly degraded the TFS. Further problem was then identified. The effective dimensionality of the network was measured, and the average correlation between any two neurons was found to be 0.999, which means that the 500 neurons were acting in lockstep. All the excitatory ones were firing, and all the inhibitory ones were firing. The cause was determined to be the input. A single input channel driving identical neurons produces identical responses. When delayed and rectified copies of the signal were supplied instead, TFS reconstruction increased by a factor of 3. The next parameter examined was network size. Increasing the neuron count from 500 to 10,000 significantly degraded performance on every metric, and increased training time from several minutes to 12 hours, so it was found not to be worthwhile. The next to be examined was depth. The same 750 neurons were arranged into 3 sequential layers of 250 each, rather than a single population, and this arrangement improved the envelope score in 39 of the 40 channels. This improvement was observed across all 5 held out recordings from a speaker that the network had not been trained on. The benefit was also found to saturate. Beyond approximately 5 layers, the deeper layers ceased firing entirely, and the reconstruction quality was degraded. The layered network was then compared against a version using a conventional signal processing front end performing frequency analysis. The layered network supplied only with delayed copies of the raw signals produced a slightly higher reconstruction score. Across all these modifications, only the envelope score improved, and the TFS score remained unchanged through depth, through heterogeneity, and through every other modification attempted. This suggested that a single network cannot serve both components. The architecture was therefore separated into 2 networks. The first was a layered network of fractional neurons trained only on the envelope. The second used fast integer order neurons and was trained only on the temporal fine structure. This was the first architecture to improve the TFS score, and once the membrane time constant of the second network was reduced, the score increased from approximately 1/4 of the theoretical maximum to 94% of it. And the envelope score was unaffected by this change. Each network, therefore, served its own component without cost to the other. It should be noted that this result was obtained at a single random seed and requires replication to verify its effect. So the architectural result holds rearranging a fixed number of neurons into layers outperformed adding further neurons, and separating the 2 components across 2 specialized networks outperformed a single network detecting both. Thank you for listening to my presentation today.
Thank you. Questions for Mohammad? Do you have an idea of, potential power savings? Because that is one of the goals, right, of doing things the way you've been doing things, yeah?
That is very much determinant on the type of physical substrate that we end up using. Some of the options that we've been looking at were atomic switch networks, which would theoretically, if we are able to implement it, allow us to have a 9-watt power budget. And if we choose like a memristor or mem capacitive crossbar, we should be in the microwatt range, which aligns with the power requirements of traditional approaches.
Great. That would be amazing. Yeah. All right. Other questions for Mohammad? Thank you again. We have Zachary Lake next up.
All right, next screen shared here.
All right.
Does everyone see it just fine?
It's coming up. Yep, you can see it.
Perfect. All right. So my project focuses on multilingual question answering systems with distractor documents. The overall goal is to retrieve the right evidence from news articles. Specifically, I used Arabic and Spanish news articles. And before generating any answers supported by that evidence. So each question comes with 8 candidate articles as shown here. 2 contain the correct support, while 6 are related distractors. In this example, the evidence needed to support the answer Berlin. That setup makes retrieval the key first step. This pipeline shows why. The generator can only use the evidence it receives. Wrong evidence can produce the wrong answer before generation ever begins. So the research question is, which retrieval strategy mostly accurately recovers the correct support for multilingual question answering? And in this example, it shows the goal. Spanish questions, Spanish evidence, all needing to support that same answer. To test that question, XRAG provides known answers and labeled supporting documents. And in this evaluation, we used 50 questions, 25 Arabic and 25 Spanish, with 2 support articles and 6 distractor questions. With the evaluation setup established, 4 retrieval methods were compared. As shown here, BM25 uses keywords, E5 uses semantic chunks, RRF combines ranking, and BGEM3 retrieves individual sentences. These methods search differently. BM25 matches words, while E5 and BGEM3 uses embeddings to compare meanings, while RRF combines ranking lists, and ChatGPT generates the answer. Before comparing them, retrieval needed a clear measurement. Retrieved evidence was checked against the known correct support. Recall measures how much support was found, and complete support coverage requires both supporting articles. Testing began with BM25. As this slide shows, BM25 scores whole articles using matching terms and how frequently those terms appear and article length. This works especially well when exact words overlap. At the top 4, meaning the 4 highest ranked articles, BM25 recovered both support articles for 32 of 50 questions, so 64%, and that established a pretty good baseline, but also exposed missing evidence. Method 2, multilingual E5, that 64% result led to a different approach. Search by meaning instead of only exact words. E5 searched overlapping articles, chunks, but the pilot recovered 4 of 20 questions. Next is the reciprocal rank fusion. Combine the BM25 and E5 rankings, complete support improved to 8 out of 20, but the main problem remained. Apparently, retrieval models can also have group project drama too. Looking at those failures revealed deeper problems. BM25 search documents, while E5 search chunks and RRF combine them, but the correct evidence could still be buried inside one specific sentence. The observation led to the biggest change, and that's the sentence level retrieval BGEM3 ranked individual sentences. While MMR balanced relevance and diversity, at the top 20, complete support increased to 40 of 50, with a 0.88 recall. This table shows why. Top 20, meaning the 20 highest ranking sentences, became the preferred setting. It kept 40 complete support questions and 0.88 recall without passing as much unnecessary context as the top 50 did. Now the 4 retrieval methods can be seen together. BM25 established the document baseline, E5 and RRF tested alternative strategies, and sentence level BGEM3 produced the strongest retrieval results in the largest evaluation. But retrieval only matters if the final answer improves. As this slide shows, answer accuracy increased from 75% with BM25 to 80% at BGEM3 top 10 and 90% at top 20. The error analysis explains the remaining gap. Straightforward facts and same language answers worked well, while similar events, incorrect numbers, and repeated evidence could still cause errors showing where the system still needs refinement. Those experiments became the working prototype shown here. A question enters the system, M3 retrieves the top 20 sentences, MMR filters the evidence, and GPT uses the selected evidence to generate the final answer. Now moving forward, those remaining error points directly to future work. Reduced repeat evidence, compare earlier and final system versions, and expand evaluations. The next goal is a cleaner evidence selection and a more reliable multilingual answer. Thank you guys for listening to my presentation, and a big thank you to the REU team and Dr. Polifka and Dr. Ellerson for being a continuous support for me.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So the languages that you chose to explore are Arabic and Spanish. And from what I know, that Arabic and Spanish tend to share a lot of features. They have similar ideas around gendering words or conjugating different verbs or even sharing a large number of vocabulary between them. Was that the intent when you chose these two languages? And if so, when interpreting these results, how would you imagine that they would change if you were to use languages with a higher variance, let's say Swahili and Mandarin?
Yeah, so choosing the languages originally, Spanish was chosen with my mentor. That was our initial choice. I chose Arabic because it was considered one of the harder ones for AI to be able to translate correctly. And in a full article, like an Arabic article, getting the exact precise evidence. Going into the harder languages like Swahili, I feel like it would the sentence level retrieval method would be able to make that easier in the sense, being able to break it down by sentences, whereas like BM25, it tries to do the entire article. And so I feel like it can lose traction basically trying to go through that entire thing. So I feel like the BGEM3 would be the optimal route to go because it would be able to break down those sentences in those different languages at a smaller degree and be able to dissect them a little bit better.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, in the interest of time, moving on to Judy and Marla.
We're going to share our screen momentarily.
All right.
Okay. So, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Our project is on investigating LLM and domain bias in hallucinated author citations.
So, hallucinations are one of the largest issues currently plaguing scientific writing. These are like non-existent citations that don't actually point to any real paper, but they stem from the usage of large language models. And they're used to falsely support scientific ideas, even making their way into some of the world's most prestigious journals.
And we aren't the only ones that notice this. So recent work has looked at published literature to identify trends in citation hallucinations, and they saw that more male and more productive authors are being cited and that these rates vary by field.
This leaves us with a few key questions. First, how do these errors actually make it into published literature? Is it differences in the models, fields, or users? We can't gauge that just from this. Also, how can one know if they're at higher risk of actually getting bad citations when they're using these models? And that points us to our main research question, which is, across 3 widely used LLMs in 5 academic disciplines, do the hallucinated citations that these directly produce disproportionately cite highly productive, highly cited, and highly male authors?
So we looked at GPT-5, Claude, and Gemini across social sciences, CS, medicine, physics, and environmental science. We did this to reflect the diversity of people using these tools in the scientific process.
From there, we had the LLMs generate around 15,000 references, and we determined the percent that were hallucinated, and we categorized them based on this. And then in our analysis, we looked at things like author biases. So within these produced citations, are we mostly seeing highly cited, highly productive, and male authors? And how do these vary based on discipline and model? And here's what makes our research unique from prior works. So one important thing is that we're analyzing from the source rather than looking at retroactively in published works. So this is emulating what a researcher would actually be seeing as they use these tools. And another goal of ours was to create tools and databases that can be utilized by future researchers. So things like the question bank, the verification pipeline, and demographic collection tools.
As for our pipeline, this is how we did it. We first took abstracts from OpenAlex's database of papers, which we fed to the 3 LLMs. We had them generate literature review style questions, and then we had them generate 5 sources to answer each question. We then fed these results into our verification process.
Our verification process mostly involved the hallucinator package, which prompts around 10 databases to verify if a citation matches known titles and authors. Then after that, we conducted further analysis using OpenAlex and Semantic Scholar. We developed a system to verify if an author actually exists, or if they're a real person, or if they're made up. And from there, if they did exist, we collected their age index and more demographic information, such as their full name. And we used that and plugged it into the Genderize API to estimate their author gender from their name.
So our key criterion questions were to expand upon the Agrawal literature, where they saw concrete hallucination rates in published literature. So we wanted to see if the rates that we saw from the 5 domains matched the ones in the published literature. So we also wanted to see if the LLM outputs would be worse than what made it into the literature, and if so, under what conditions would they be worse.
So for overall hallucination rates, we found that around 48% of them were hallucinated, so of all of the published citations. And then for the hallucination rates specific to the LLMs, we saw that Gemini performed significantly worse than Claude and GPT, although Claude was also significantly worse than GPT.
And looking across domains, we see that the domain impacts the hallucination rate. We also saw an interesting trend where our environmental sciences hallucination rate was much higher than what the trends are in published works.
So we took a closer look at this, analyzing the hallucination rates by model for environmental science. And here we can see an insanely high hallucination rate for Gemini. And that inspired us to actually analyze domain-model interactions. And we found that domain does, in fact, impact the hallucination rates across all of the models. And this chart on the right can be super important to academics. So they might want to pick a model that best works for their subject. And this is information that's useful for that.
And we also looked at author productivity bias. So in our hallucinator citations where real authors are found, we found that there was a significant increase in the H index compared to our baseline. So we saw an H index average of about 60, where our baseline had an H index of 14. So this follows the trend seen in Agrawal, except our averages are even higher and the one we saw was triple to the value compared in our baseline.
And we then analyzed gender bias. So across the models, we didn't see any significant difference in the gender rates. So like one model did not select men more than another model. However, overall, compared to our baseline sample, we did see that our hallucinated citations did disproportionately cite men. It was a 7.91% increase, which is comparable to the rates found in published literature.
So this is why we think we got the results we did. We think that cheaper LLMs may lead to poor performance, that the unique trends we saw across domains may be due to less training data for the LLMs or lower LLM usage in the domain in general, and that the exaggerated gender and H-index biases may be just reflecting real trends in science.
And overall, we found, again, that the models do indeed show heightened biases in how they generate citations, both real and hallucinated, with patterns relying on domain and model. And these do appear to differ from the trends found in published literature. So looking at the environmental science example, like that was not seen in the published literature. So somewhere along the line, that bias gets filtered out. And we also, again, saw demographic biases that reflect real world trends. And why does this actually matter? First, it provides clarity for users and researchers. So, for example, which models are riskier for hallucinations overall? And if I am studying physics, for example, which models express those biases more strongly? How can I use the correct tools to avoid letting these issues continue to propagate into research? We also created a very large citation and question database for further analysis, all of which is available on our GitHub. And we have the extendable pipeline, so we can verify, we can determine author gender. And again, this is all available. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Questions?
Yeah, I was wondering what models for Claude and ChatGPT you were using. I saw that you were using Gemini 3.5, but I didn't see like we're using Opus or.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we used Claude Opus 4.8 and GPT 5.5.
Thank you.
And we selected those as like kind of the flagship models, and then Gemini was one of the cheaper options. We wanted to see if we select a cheaper option, how does that also impact it?
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. All right, we have Surya and Dragov.
Yeah, let me share my screen real quick.
All right.
Okay. Oh wait, hold on. Do you guys see the presentation screen or the other one?
We see your notes as well.
Okay. 1 second. Okay.
All right. Perfect.
Government yield curves look smooth, but predicting their moves is difficult. This summer, Surya and I asked whether monetary policy regimes and shocks across maturities could improve forecasts beyond the simplest benchmark. The Treasury curve is made up of 11 different rates, from 1 month to 30 years, all moving together. Those movements shape mortgages, corporate borrowing, government debt, inflation expectations, and Federal Reserve policy. At horizons shorter than a month, the toughest forecasting benchmark is pretty simple. Tomorrow's curve equals today's. The random walk already captures persistence, so a more complicated model needs to find a real signal and a real pattern and not invent movement. We asked whether 2 kinds of structure could help. First, which monetary policy regime are we in, and how long might it last? Second, how are shocks spreading across short, medium, and long maturities? We assembled daily Treasury data for 11 different maturities, plus break-even inflation and the effective federal funds rate. After aligning the calendars, we had 5,841 trading days from 2003 all the way through 2026, spanning several policy eras. 11 yields are too many to forecast separately. The dynamic Nelson-Siegel reduces each daily curve to 3 factors: level, slope, and curvature. We fit the decay parameter on training data, then use those factors to describe the curve. A standard hidden Markov model assumes memoryless regime changes and estimated average spells of only 58 to 148 trading days, while policy eras lasted up to 891 days. So the model basically lost track of persistence. We then replaced it with a hidden semi-Markov model, which tracks spell duration, and its regimes persist for months or years, and the boundaries match the major policy shifts, even without event dates or regime labels. We also measured how shocks spread through the curve. So a rolling variance decomposition estimates how much uncertainty at each maturity comes from shocks elsewhere. And we also looked at how nearby maturities affect each other most, while the total connectedness changed during different stress periods. And we also used a forecast using current factors, recent changes, regime probabilities, expected duration, and spillover measures. And the ridge regression predicted future changes, which we then blended with our forecast with the random walk as results came in.
So the first model that we created predicted level, and that model ended up failing. it ended up drifting towards an old average that had nothing to do with our current market situations. But when we predicted changes, the shrinkage became safe. So we changed to predicting the actual changes in the rates instead of the actual level. So whenever the model is unsure, it predicts no change at all, which is exactly the same as a random walk benchmark. So our trust also shifted to whichever model was working the best. So we never let our model bet alone. We blended it with the random walk and gave it an exponentially weighted average to whichever one had been more accurate in the recent months. We tested on over 1,100 trading days from late September 2021 to 2026 May, and every forecast used only had information that was available on that day with no look-ahead bias. And our edge grew as the forecast got longer. So at 1 day ahead, no model that we tried could beat the random walk, and neither could our full model. But at 5 and 20 days, our model won by a small and steady margin. Our model worked best during the 2022 rate hike cycle, where our error was about 7% lower at the 20-day horizon. Long, steady trends are exactly where our regime memory helps with our hidden semi-Markov model. At 20 days, the signal also had economic value. We asked whether the accuracy was worth real trading money. So at 20 days, the model captured about 28% of the available movement in the actual yield. However, in July, the result had ended up flipping. We created a new validation dataset, and the rates reversed very sharply in July. And at 20 days, we ended up losing the errors that we were getting previously before. And that failure is the most important result that we got. It shows that our edge is real, but only when there's actual steady trends and persistent regimes, but disappears when the market turns suddenly or is very volatile. So the structure helps until the actual regime ends up changing. So our regime structure helped while the trends last, but the next step is making sure that our model can work when the actual structure ends up breaking. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions? Did you compare with any of the state-of-the-art other models, or was that var X?
Yeah, that's what we tried. So we had a couple benchmarks. We used like a standard VAR model and XGBoost, and we did get
Okay.
lower errors compared to those. But our main benchmark was the random walk model, which basically predicts like no movement at all. And that's just because yields in general don't really change that much in the short term. So that's why we kept it as our benchmark.
Okay. And do you have an idea about the computational cost of these methods as well, including yours?
Only the hidden Markov model ends up taking like a decent amount of time to actually train. The other ones
Okay.
are like the vector autoregressive model we were using just fits like a linear regression essentially, but with 5 different
Okay.
coefficients.
Okay, so that's super fast, yeah. Okay, great. Great, that brings us to the end of the third session. We have a, what is that, 16-minute break, and we'll continue at noon Pacific time. See you in a bit. Lasse, are you ready to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
All right. Coming up. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Perfect. Let me just set this up correctly then.
We can see it. Yeah. But let's wait a minute
You got it.
before
Yeah.
you start. Yeah. Okay, let's get started. Welcome
All
to
right.
session 4. Lars is going first.
All right. Let me get this going. All right, hello, my name is Loss. So I spent the summer building a neuron out of resistors and capacitors, not a simulation, a real circuit that fires like a nerve cell. Question I wanted to answer, what happens if you give it a better kind of memory? So real neurons remember, fire one rapidly, and it keeps charging over milliseconds, seconds, over minutes, all at the same time. There's no single time constant. That spread of time scales isn't a defect. It's how brains handle signals arriving fast and slow together. So real membranes forget as a power law. Fast at first, then a long tail that never quite ends. Engineers call an element like that fractional order, behaving as half a capacitor and half a resistor at once. So you can't buy that part. Unfortunately, nobody sells a component whose memory you could dial in. So the first question is simply on tunability. Can you build one from ordinary parts and prove it actually changes how a neuron behaves? So here's my answer. 7 resistor capacitors side by side, each tuned to a different time scale, 6 milliseconds at the very fast end and nearly 5 seconds at the slow end. And you stack enough of them, and the sum of them imitates a power law. So measured on its own, cold, driven with a constant current, the latter's response stays flat across 2.5 decades of time. That exponent comes out at 0.53 plus or minus 0.02, half a capacitor exactly as designed. Then I wired it into a neuron. So charge builds up on the ladder until a Schmidt trigger fires, a transistor dumps it, and it starts again. 11 spikes a second. The membrane is fully analog. The spike out is clean digital. Because the spike is already a digital edge, I could timestamp it with a microcontroller. The same 2 hours on the oscilloscope would have been 160 gigabytes versus the microcontroller does it in 2.5 megabytes. So again, every result will need something to beat. So how about the boring version as well? The same board, same threshold, same code and everything else. So one ordinary capacitor where the ladder was, 300 experiments on each one, identical protocol, ran back to back. And then from there on, I just let them both run at a constant current. The plain capacitor settles immediately and holds one interval forever. The ladder takes tens of seconds and moves nearly a quarter of its period getting there. One has a history. Here's the clearest thing I also found. Both circuits get drained to 60 millivolts when they reset. 20 microseconds later, the plain capacitor is still sitting at 0. The ladder has already spun back to its 55% of full charge. So that's a factor of 457 measured directly with no model, no curve fit, and no free parameters. The reset simply cannot reach the charge stored in the slow branches. The circuit remembers the spike it just finished. The charging curves also say the same thing. The plain capacitor climbs almost like a textbook exponential. The ladder bends hard. It changes fast and slows, then crawls. Several different time scales, all visible in a single sweep. So from there on, then I just poked it 300 times. A tiny pulse of current delivered at random moments of cycle, measuring how much earlier the next spike arrives. So neuroscientists call the result of this a phase response curve. So the answer scales cleanly with the charge I inject across a 35-fold range in both circuits. So that's good news. It means the measurement is honest and nothing is saturating. The interesting part is what happens when I hold the charge fixed. So again, same total charge, split into two half pulses instead of one, widen the gap between them from half a millisecond to 10. The ladder responds more strongly every time. The plain capacitor doesn't notice at all. So timing matters, not just amount of charge. Okay, one honest caveat is this in-circuit data cannot measure the fractional order. The range of waiting times I can reach spans about a third of the decade, so far too short to fit a power law. The number stands on the bench measurement alone. So 5 independent measurements separate the two circuits, how the rate settles, the snap bag, the shape of the charging curve, the timing effect, and how the disturbance fades over later cycles. Different methods, and every one of them agrees. My next steps would be make it adjustable, make the fractional order adjustable. So right now it's fixed by 7 resistors, replacing them with digital potentiometers, and you could dial the memory neuron by neuron, a step towards like a single device that does this intrinsically. So the larger GREU is this hardware that computes with time built into the material instead of simulating it. So you saw Sagar's work on honey as a physical reservoir earlier today. This is the electrical quantified version of the same question. So thanks to Christoph, Tucker, everyone at the Tutor Lab, and the Intel REU program.
Thank you. Questions for last? What are you going to build next?
To be honest, next, there's so many ways to go, but we could attempt with, so I have multiple neurons already built, and I want to use them to connect to the microcontroller, and then for them to charge. So what's going to happen is each neuron will spike another neuron, but the difference of spiking will come from the microcontroller. So for example, when I mentioned timing matters, so that's where I want to see if I could synchronize two neurons together. Would that make a difference, or desync them completely? They'll probably, if you desync them, they'll probably just cancel, but synchronizing them will make a difference. If not, I'll likely go for the adjustable as well. Bring a digital potentiometer, because I have a microcontroller already, so I could easily control that with that. So that's also would be cool. But we'll talk more about that next week, hopefully.
Yeah, that's great. Good, thank you. All right, Tanvi and Prince.
Hi, are we audible?
We can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're presenting together, and now I'll share my screen. Are you guys able to see our screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So hello, I'm Tanvi.
I'm Prince.
So this summer we built Hydro AI, a tool that scores how honestly AI companies disclose their water use and tells 420 data centers which water saving goal actually fits the location. Hydro AI is a rule-based freshwater recommendation engine for US data centers. It's priority ordered and not a weighted score. US data centers are booming, and so is their water footprint. Cooling towers alone consume millions of gallons per facility per year. The question nobody had answered at scale is, which cooling alternative actually fits which facility?
We built our answer on 420 real data centers, facilities across 4 companies like Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft, each matched to exact coordinates, a water stress score, and a local climate data. Layer 1 maps every facilities to WRI Aqueduct 4.0 Global Water Stress Index, scored 0 to 5. It tells us whether water is already scarce before a data center even shows up.
Layer 2 measures distance to the nearest coastline, the nearest major lake, and the nearest EPA-registered wastewater use plant. Geography decides which cooling options are even physically on the table for a given site. Layer 3 is climate. It adds a summer average temperature and dew point and calculated with the FAO 56 Penman equation. Together, these determine something crucial, whether free air cooling is even physically possible at that location.
We rank 5 alternatives in strict priority order. First is seawater or lake cooling. Then comes reclaimed wastewater, then air cooling, followed by immersion cooling, and last closed loop dry cooling as a universal fallback. Top rule is if facility sits within 10 kilometers of coastline or major lake, it qualifies for direct water cooling, and it is the cheapest option, needing few new infrastructure and eliminates freshwater draw.
Air cooling only qualifies below strict climate thresholds. Summer average temperature under 27 degrees Celsius and dew point under 15 degrees Celsius. Meet both, and a facility uses close to zero evaporative water for most of the year. Immersion cooling needs campus style for infrastructure and no better specific option nearby. Closed loop dry cooling is universal fallback, always feasible, zero ongoing water withdrawal, trading some water savings for higher energy use.
The result across all 420 facilities, 71% land on reclaimed wastewater, 23% on fallback to closed loop dry cooling, and only handful 5% under combined qualifies for immersion air or seawater cooling. Facility type matters enormously in this. Campus style sites are just 50 of 420 gets far more diverse recommendation because space enables immersion cooling. The other 368 single building leans almost entirely on reclaimed wastewater dry cooling.
For example, Primal, Oregon has a cool, dry summer climate. You'd expect air cooling to win, but the engine recommends reclaim wastewater first instead because site-specific infrastructure options outrank climate conditions, climate-based ones when both are available. Priority order matters. San Antonio is hot and humid, so air cooling is off the table immediately. The nearest reclaimed wastewater plant just sits past our distance threshold in high water stress region, and therefore it falls under closed loop dry cooling, the universal fallback, and nothing else qualifies.
Recommendation only matters if we trust the underlying data. So we also scored how openly Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta actually disclose water use. Transparency scores based on the water figures reveal that incorporate sustainability PDF. Google and Meta scores 4, facility level, name, location. Microsoft scores a 3 on company-wide totals only. Amazon scores a 1.
Here's what transparency gap cost us. Google reported 29477 million liters of water, Microsoft 5807, Meta 2974, and Amazon's figure were 9464 million liters. They don't publish it in their PDFs.
Every one of the 420 facilities is plotted in an interactive US map, color coded by water stress and clustered by risk tier. Zoom in and the pattern jumps out immediately. This is not evenly distributed at all.
Not every data center needs the same fix. Site-specific evidence-based recommendation beat one-size-fits-all policy. And when transparency gaps this large exist, policymakers and communities literally cannot see the full picture of what they are regulating. So our next steps with this project include expanding past 4 companies to full data center industry, incorporate reservoir data instead of just natural lakes, and push for standardized facility-level water disclosures as an industry norm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Are you too aware of Erin Brokowicz's data center webpage?
No.
I recently came across that. I'll post a link in the chat.
Okay.
I think you should get in touch with them because they have some really cool data and the website is evolving. From what I understand, they're looking for all kinds of new features and things.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, there is water usage and community reporting and whatnot. And so I think you could really, contribute a very interesting angle. So I would suggest you get in touch with them.
Definitely we will. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you again. Other questions? Sweet. All right. We have Temeshkin and Konstantinos up next.
Okay, I'll share my screen.
All right. Good. We can see it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hello everyone. I'm Temeshkin.
Konstantinos.
And this summer we worked on Dalmatian, an open wildfire early warning and spread risk dashboard. In the Bay Area where we live, wildfires have become part of normal summer life. Alerts and smoke arrive suddenly, and people often don't know which nearby areas might become dangerous next. So we asked, can we identify high-risk areas earlier before the fire grows? The NASA FIRM system already detects fires from satellites, but it only shows what's happening now, not where the next danger might be. We wanted to go one step further, predicting which areas are most likely to spread. When we looked at existing models, we found gaps in things like fuel moisture, slope, and humidity, that they weren't being combined in a lightweight model. So we scaled our project and we wanted to build something that bring those pieces together. Then our question became, can a lightweight open source system that combines satellite detection with wind, slope, and dryness indicators flag high-risk areas earlier than satellite detections alone? Historically, Dalmatians ran ahead of fire carriages to clear the path. So in this project model, it will operate as a predictive spotter that looks ahead of the fire front. That's where our model comes in, a dashboard that visualizes wildfire spread risk in real time. It uses, again, 3 physical drivers: wind, humidity, and slope. Each is normalized and weighted to produce a risk score between 0 and 1. For fire detections, we use NASA FIRMS data. These points right here show where heat anomalies were detected in the last 24 hours. And to do that, we had to download a 24-hour CSV file. So we could bypass like API authentication and logins, giving us a starting place for accessing potential spread. The model also pulls hourly wind and humidity data from OpenMeteo API. This JSON snippet right here shows the raw data, the same numbers that feed our model. For terrain, we used USGS Evaluation API to estimate slope. Steeper terrains can accelerate fire spread, so the slope becomes part of the risk calculation. And this is our risk formula right here. This is a starting point. Hopefully, future versions will include vegetation dryness and other risk factors, but yeah, this is the risk score.
Yeah, we built this using Python, Volume, and Open APIs. No login barriers. The goal was accessibility, so anyone can run it. Here how it looks in action. Each point represents a firm detection colored by risk level. When we tested it on Bay Area fires, windy, dry area consistently show higher predicted risk. Exactly what we hope to see. Testing the pipeline with recent Bay Area detection showed that windy, dry area consistently produce higher predicted spread risk. The model behaves in a way that matches real-world intuition. When we tested the Dalmatian on recent Bay Area detection, the result made sense. Windy, dry area consistently showed high risk. We added a fallback for missing slope or weather data, so the dashboard always runs even when the API is failed. This is still evolving. We're refining the model and testing the new data sources. Early warning save time and time save lives. A lightweight open tool like this could help local agencies and community to prepare faster. And if we had more time, we would expand the model, of course. Backtesting to validate accuracy, tuning thresholds, adding in the VI for vegetation, dryness, and field moisture for data for ignition prediction. The payoff is a low-cost open dashboard that helps community to act earlier, not after the fire has already grown. Dalmatian started as a simple question, can we predict to spread risk earlier? Now it's a working prototype that shows that we can. That should be it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions? I think I was reading that Canada had the problem that you're basically trying to address, that the fires spread much faster than anybody anticipated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually did think about this. So I read about it too, and then we were thinking about adding some kind of like retrospective back testing where we can test it in different areas, like besides the Bay Area.
Okay.
But the model or the dashboard we created just focus on Bay Area and predicting any outcomes.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So how were you able to validate your model in the Bay Area?
Yeah, so that's why it's like kind of like a predictive model. So if
Okay.
it's good enough with the time constraints we had, we could scale it to like include more variables and do like I said, retrospective backtesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very cool. Good. Other questions? I don't see anybody here. All right, Anya and Peter are next on my list. You're still muted. Okay,
See
good.
my screen? Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Peter Palma,
I am Anya.
and today we are going to be presenting on EnviroTracker. We're both math majors at Villanova University, and we're very passionate about the environment, and we're very excited to share our website with you all. Okay, so what is the problem? The world is heating up. This is a graph of the Earth's projected temperature increase for the next 60 years, which is dependent on emissions of CO2. Even if we keep a medium amount of CO2 use, it'll still increase year by year, making the Earth completely unlivable. 71% of all global industrial greenhouse gas emissions are linked to the top 100 fossil fuel producers. This means that 635 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions came from those top 100 companies. But companies are not the only ones influencing climate change. People do too. A lot of our everyday actions influence the climate. Things like not disposing of waste properly, or recycling the correct way, or using single-use plastics and items that are manufactured in factories, or even taking the plane and buying from fast fashion influence climate change. But these are all part of our carbon footprint, and there are many different aspects of our lives that fit into this. And although an individual's carbon footprint is only a fraction of the global emissions, if millions of people start to change their habits together, we'll start to see a real change. But individual gas emissions are especially a problem in North America. As seen in the diagram, North Americans' average CO2 emissions per year are greater than 2 times the second highest. This means that North Americans are contributing to the most climate change and that something has to change. Now, there are already a lot of apps out there to help you keep track of your routines and help you find new ways to reduce, reuse, and recycle, or to help you find organizations passionate about saving the climate. But we decided to bring these apps together into one website, EnviroTracker.
EnviroTracker was built for the purpose of having a platform to not only track your own habits, but to have multiple resources for users to learn more about what can be done to combat climate change and what companies are impacting the environment the most. And the website's main feature is the habit tracker, where you're able to log your habits that help the environment. This is an experience that you can personalize to fit your life habits with a system that rewards routines. As you can see on the right, there's your daily log where you can write your own habits and check off what you've done for the day. Every user starts off with a tiny sprout, and as you continue to log your habits every day, you'll see growth. And maintaining your streak will be rewarding as you get to see your tree grow. Although if you miss a day, you'll have to start from the sprout again. We created this section of the website, tips and tricks, to provide methods on how the average person can contribute to reducing their carbon footprint, as like minor suggestions. And as an example, here's the transportation tab of the tips and tricks section, where grouping these tips allows users to quickly find what they're looking for. And the heading of every card allows users to easily distinguish one tip from another. So as you can see with electric vehicles and public transportation and carpooling, things like that. And here's another tab among the tips and tricks where there's all suggestions on how one can reduce waste within their homes, communities, at the store, and more. It's important that these habits are instilled in every home so we can see a greener future. And these are things that we can start now, like using reusable bags at the grocery store or just throwing away water bottles in the correct bins, things like that. And climate and environmental changes are caused by human and corporate activities, which is shown with this section of the website. And it's to show how impactful big corporations are with carbon dioxide emissions, which can negatively impact the environment and our well-being. And all these values are listed with the source in the website as well. Yeah. And we also provided a list of companies that are actively combating climate change. And with our site, we hope to provide information for those who are curious to learn more about what companies are doing to benefit the environment and understand what they can do as well. Because everybody can make tiny changes to make a bigger difference. And through this experience and having our peers test run our website, we were able to understand what users truly prioritize and what helps their habits grow. We hope to add more interactive features such as a leaderboard in the future to gain traction and keep an active user base.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Anya and Peter? How did you find the corporate data? Was that just available online, or did you have a database of some sorts already? Or
Yeah, there was a website with a lot of information together, and we kind of just added up all the like little sections that they had. I think it was Carbon Majors, the website that we use for
okay,
that data.
okay. And so yours doesn't just focus on carbon. You're an aggregator, if you want, of more data and all kinds of other perspectives. So,
Yeah, yeah, we tried to like using different aspects, but
yeah.
yeah, it was easier to use the Carbon Majors data for that section of the website.
All right. Very cool. Good. More questions from the audience? If not, we'll move on to Eric Don and Diane O as the last speakers of this session.
Okay, I'm Dion.
My name is Eric.
And this summer we worked on evaluating whether LLM-assisted seed generation benefits fuzzing for PNG and XML file blushes.
Web servers routine,
Sorry. Yep.
Web servers routinely ingest untrusted user files. Because parser libraries are very complex, hidden edge case bugs can allow malicious uploads to trigger crashes, denial of service, or complete system compromise.
One example of this is the XML bomb. By using nested entity references, a tiny 1 kilobyte file exponentially expands to gigabytes in memory when parsed, instantly crashing the web server via denial of service.
To discover these parser bugs automatically, we use fuzzing. A fuzzer continuously generates randomized or mutated file inputs, feeds them to the target parser, and monitors for crashes to pinpoint underlying security vulnerabilities.
This brings us to our core research question. Does LLM-assisted seed generation with and without documentation context improve AFL++ mutation fuzzing targeting file format parsers?
To evaluate our approach, we select two fundamentally different file targets, XML and PNG. XML represents complex human-readable text formats, while PNG represents structured binary data.
Our independent variable was the seed corpus, the initial collection of valid sample files provided to the fuzzer. We evaluated LLM-generated seeds against baselines by measuring code coverage, depth, and unique crashes discovered.
We follow the 2018 paper evaluating fuzz testing, which recommended doing multiple trials, each for at least 24 hours, and to use statistical tests to determine if the results are actually statistically significant.
Our timeline consisted of around 5 weeks to set up the necessary infrastructure, 1 week to generate the seed corpora, 1 week to run the fuzzers, and 1 week to analyze the data.
As a baseline test, we also fuzzed two commonly used C corpora, PNG suite and an XML W3C test suite. The specifications we gave GPT 5.4 were XML 5th edition and PNG 2nd edition, both in raw HTML format.
To generate the necessary seed corpora for fuzzing, we had to connect to and prompt GPT 5.4 using the OpenAI API. And we also had to check that the files were valid using PNG check and XML-int.
A major problem was prompting the LLM to promote in a way to promote diversity. During seed generation, we noticed that GPT 5.4 was able to generate XML seeds first try almost 100% of the time, but had a lot of trouble generating PNG seeds.
We used the Elastic Compute Cloud from Amazon Web Services to run our fuzzing servers. We ran 4 Ubuntu instances, each using 16 cores or 32 vCPUs. We ran 20 trials for each PNG arm and 10 trials for each XML arm.
We utilized Magma, a fuzzing benchmark tool that reintroduced real historical bugs into a replica of the two parser libraries that we were fuzzing, libpng and libxml2. This allowed us to more accurately measure the performances of each seed corpora.
We found that only the PNG baseline seed corpus was able to find any unique crashes, so we had to switch to edge coverage as a secondary metric. On the XML side, both the baseline and LLM-generated seed corpora found the same amount of edges.
As the numbers were not diverse, our statistical tests told us what the pure data already suggested. The PNG baseline corpus vastly outperformed both LLM-generated C corpora. As for the XML side, all three C corpora performed equally well.
This experiment suggests that LLMs are not great at creating PNG seeds, which are binary-based and require math. However, they are much better at creating text-based XML seeds.
Most of the work in the project went into coding the seed generation pipeline, as Magma helped save us some more manual coding for the fuzzing part of the experiment. As such, most problems we faced were bugs from our own code.
There are many different ways that we could expand on this experiment. For example, we could try using LLMs such as Gemini, or try other formats such as JPEG or zip files. We could also try using more modern parsers such as RustPNG and XML crates.
File parsers sit at the core of everyday web browsers, operating systems, and cloud infrastructure. By experimenting with LLMs to create better fuzzing seeds, we hope guide developers on LLM usage to stop malicious hackers.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Questions? So you think the text space is better or works better because LLMs were actually trained on text, and that's kind of like an obvious conclusion or consequence of that?
Yes, for PNG file formats, we noticed that the PNG format itself requires some math. There's stuff like CRC chunks in them that you have to do math on, which LLMs aren't exactly great at. So the XML, which is text-based, of course, it performed better.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Is your tool also on GitHub open sourced or not yet? Or never?
We have it on GitHub, but I think it's at private right now.
Okay. Okay. Great. I forgot to say that at the beginning, but anybody who wants to share their tool, code, whatever, feel free to post links in the chat. And we can also put that on the website. The recording will be available once that is transcribed and whatnot. We'll share that with all of you. But we're happy to share any of your tool links, sources, whatever you've done as well. All right, that brings us to the end of session 4. We have a slightly longer break. We'll continue at 1 o'clock Pacific time with our last session. So maybe a good time to grab some lunch or coffee or snacks. Talk to you soon. Welcome back. All right, next team is Raya, Belu, Habib, and Gideon. Who's going to share the screen?
I'm going to be sharing my screen.
All right. Okay, let's just get ready. We'll wait another minute. Okay, we can see your slides. Let's wait another second. Okay, well, I guess it's 1 o'clock. Good. All right, whenever you guys are ready, let's do it.
All right. Hello, everybody. Our group is trying to predict urban air quality from weather. Next slide, please. So the real problem is weather hides the real trend, and we want to see like if we come up with a machine learning language, if we can have like the real trend. And as you can see the numbers there from 2019, 2020, we can see like the real data there. Next slide, please. So we have 2 questions. The first question we asked was, can a machine learning predict daily Los Angeles air quality from weather better than simple rules? And our second language is, after we remove the weather effects, has Los Angeles's air genuinely improved over the decade or not. We picked up Los Angeles because of the industrial nature of the city, and that we can have so many data. Next slide, please. We got our data from NASA Miranda satellite and also EPA. We got like 3,649 days worth of data. And what we trying to do with our machine learning is first collect the data, 10 years of NASA plus EPA data, and then we will train our machine language, learn the weather patterns, and we will make our machine language predict the models. And then after that, we will normalize it so that to strip the weather effect and then set the trend.
You're muted.
So we will try to, our target is basically to beat the machine learning by 20%, the model by 20%. Next slide.
So we came up with 6 models to just see how they're doing right now. And out of those 6 models, our SVR model was doing pretty much better than the others, and all of their root mean squared error and R squared value are mentioned in this slide. And that was already beating our benchmark, which was 20%, and we're already getting 44%, which from the SVR model. But that's still not going to help us answer our primary question. So we basically mixed 3 of the best performing models, which were SVR MLP, which was a neural network, and the gradient boosting, and we're able to get a better root mean squared error. And then we added 24 physics features like wind speed and sea level, and if those things affect the air quality itself. And now we were able to get our squared value of 0.825, and then our mean absolute error was also going down with the RMSE as well. And we can basically forecast the daily AQI from those 3 best performing models with the extra added features from the physics features, and we can say what the AQI will be today or tomorrow. And for the outstanding or like the absolutely random increasing days, we were not able to predict it based on our normal model. So we ended up coming up with another model, quantile model, which I'm going to explain in a bit. But for now, we can say the weather can explain 82.5% of the daily AQI. And to answer our primary question, we see if ozone and PM2.5, which is atmospheric particulate matter, are affected by the weather itself. As you can see, ozone can be affected by the weather, but not those particular matters, because those are affected by wildfires, cooking, emissions from cars, and emission from companies. So we can't really say we can purely predict our daily AQI based on off of weather only. So we have to consider other factors as well. And using the weather and the PM2.5 information that we can find from EPA and NASA, we can predict daily AQIs, but not the outstanding or like the unique ones. So as a range is increasing from 0 to 50, 51 to 100 and above, our MAE, mean absolute value error, was getting larger and larger. And this was because we were not able to predict it with the base model. So the quantile model we came up with includes the other 3 factors like polytantis, the PM2.5, and the weather. So all these factors are included, and 76% of the time, the dangerous days were predicted accurately. So now we can say we can predict it more accurately. And we were able to answer our question based on the weather. We can predict the daily forecasts, but to see the outstanding ones, we have to include the PM2.5 and other factors as well. And for our secondary question, we had to normalize the data. And to do that, we wrote a code to normalize it, train the SVR model again, and then build a reference weather profile for each year, and then fit the same weather to every year so that we can say this is a normalized or de-weathered model. And then the trend that's going to be left is going to be the real emission or the real difference between those factors. And we see that there is no improvement or decrement of air quality in the last 10 years in LA, and that will answer our secondary question. But if we were about to see the road trend, it would have been only decreasing, and it looks like it was improving, but actually it is pretty much the same and it stays flat. So this is our answer and like limitation for the models we have. So based on those two models, we can predict pretty much everything. And we would like to thank everybody who helped us through this summer.
Thank you. Questions? How much would it cost or take to do a model for Portland or any other city?
Say that question again, please.
How much would it cost or take to transfer your model to another city than LA, like Portland, or you
Yeah.
name it?
It doesn't cost anything as long as we are able to find the EPA MERA-2 satellite information and the NASA weather information. We can predict it on our laptop for free.
Okay, very cool. Other questions? Good. I think we're right on time. Joe is next. Thank you, guys. Looks very narrow. Can you maybe make
Oh,
it
it does.
wider?
I'm trying to do a side by side with my.
Oh, it's fine. We can see it.
Okay. I can do that a little bit. There we go. Okay.
Sounds good.
I'm Joe Klink. This summer I tested whether our convolutional neural network can learn to identify hidden geothermal sites from a surface geology, and found that how you frame the learning problem matters as much as the training data itself. Geothermal power is clean, reliable, and available around the clock, unlike solar or wind, but most of its potential sits underground, invisible, with no way to confirm it without drilling. Drilling an exploratory well costs millions of dollars, and most come up dry. Geologists rely on surface signals, active faults, elevated heat flow, crustal strain to prioritize where to drill. This map shows exactly that. Faults in purple, 375 labeled favorable structural settings in orange. They cluster tightly along fault intersections, a real visible spatial pattern in the data. The research question, can a model learn that structural pattern well enough to flag geologically similar locations across the whole basin, including places no one has ever drilled? I started with tabular baselines, XGBoost, and extra trees, classifying one grid cell at a time from its own fault distance, heat flow, and gravity readings with no spatial context. The XGBoost baseline scored a strong 0.755 test AUC overall, but caught only 6% of held-out sites. High overall accuracy, poor recall on what actually mattered. So I moved to a UNet, a convolutional neural network architecture that scores a whole 128 by 128 pixel neighborhood at once, roughly 13 square kilometers, using the surrounding spatial context directly. Inside a labeled site, I don't know which specific pixels are the true signal. I tested 4 loss functions for that: ordinary BCE dice, top K pooling, multiple instance learning, and generalized mean pooling. To trust the comparison, I cross-validated every loss across 120 independent random train test splits rather than risking conclusion from one split's luck. The ordinary dice baseline, grading every pixel in a site as positive, produced 25% background false positive rate. It flagged a quarter of the basin as promising. Detection at a matched 5% false positive rate, the 3 polygon-aware losses detected 91 to 98% of held-out sites, versus just 36 for the ordinary baseline at the same budget. Top K and multiple instance learning came out statistically tied for best, both around 83 to 84% detection. Even at a strict 1% false positive rate, generalized mean pooling needed a looser budget to catch up. Midway through, I found a real bug. Averaging overlapping prediction tiles equally let CNN edge distortion leak into the map as a periodic seam. I diagnosed it, fixed it, and re-verified against a real model. I confirmed the fix directly. Tile boundary pixels were averaging 5 times too high before the fix. After, that dropped to just 1.3 times, verified on a real trained model, not just synthetic data. Practically, this narrows an expensive, largely blind search, turning a basin-wide guess into a shorter geologically ranked list of candidate sites worth a closer look. The bigger methodological lesson, how you formulate the supervision, pixel-wise versus polygon-aware, mattered more to detection performance than which input features or architecture I used. This isn't field validated yet. No new drilling has confirmed it, and the 128 pixel patch size was inherited, not derived for this problem. Both are open questions for future work. So, can a model learn to read geology the way a geologist does? Not perfectly and not yet, but this summer showed it's a real, measurable, and worthwhile question. Thank you to everyone, and thank you to Professor Tusher and Professor Lipor and Professor Pazner for running ORCA for us, which helped me quite a bit.
Thank you. Questions for Joe?
Joe, nice job on your talk. I'm wondering, did you ever at any point plot the known favorability or known geothermal systems and compare to like your predicted favorable structural settings?
So you mean the actual sites?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually did create some maps that did that and look through them. And I actually created one that just had the 4 difficult or the 4 low scoring ones, Don Campbell, Wabuska, Elko, and I forget what the other one is. And just map those out to just see how those highlighted or how my predictions stacked up against those. It did pretty good on Elko, actually. It lit up about 40% of it, I think.
Interesting. Nice.
Mhm.
How did you use ORCA specifically?
Well, I leveraged the GPUs because these, I mean, when I ran 120 cross validations on the 4 different losses, it takes about 9 to 10 hours because there's a lot of computations going on there.
Great. For those who don't know, ORCA is the Oregon Research Cluster that is available for free for users. You can just go online and sign up and run some cool simulations. All right, thank you, Joe. We have Gokhan and Akash.
Hello. Yes, we both here.
Great.
Oh, wrong one. Sorry. So it's the first one. Okay. It's good.
Coming up, yep. Great.
Yep. I can find my mouse. There you go. Hello, everyone.
We can see your... Oh, okay. It looks good, yeah.
I'm Gopalakrishnan. And I'm Akash Lorca. Before we start, we'd like to thank Dr. Tosher and altREU for the opportunity. Today we will be talking about our summer research, which is comparing drag coefficients of different shark tentacles. But why do we care those? Because we have fluid dynamics everywhere, in ships to airplanes to even spore equipment. But there is always drag, which is a resistance of fluids. So that's why engineers usually try to reduce it. But sharks have already figured out a solution for that. Shark skins has denticles, which are like a tooth-like structures on the surface, but it's like a little different than from fish scales, and they have to reduce flow separation, thereby drag. And researchers have been working on shark denticles for more than 3 decades, and they studied denticles either through experiments or simulations. And experiments have manufacturing limitations because denticles are in sub-millimeter scales. Also, one other thing is like mostly they focus on only one species, which is short-fin mako shark, the fastest shark. That's why we decided to decide like different species denticles through simulation. So for that, we start making 4 different design for denticles. So we designed parametrically in Fusion 360 by using a scripting method to make denticles easily and also like easy to replicate for others. So we did the simulation with starting replicating a scenario from a paper, which we placed a row of macroshark denticles on a NACA airfoil and simulated fluid flow with OpenPOL. And with that, first we started meshing. As you can see, we have a really dense mesh around airfoil and even like a denser mesh on the denticles, because when we compare the size of denticles and airfoil, it's like a really big difference. And for the simulation, we needed to consider many properties. To reduce the computational load, we used a steady state simulation and SSDKW for turbines. So we used RANS model here. And after the simulation, to calculate the drag coefficient, which has 2 components, pressure drag and viscous drag. And pressure drag is perpendicular to the airfoil surface, while viscous drag is parallel.
And once the simulation is finished, this is usually what we can visualize. This is basically a velocity field around the airfoil. The first one is without denticle, and the second one without. We can notice here there's a little pressure wake due to the denticle, but this is the result. So here we can see that we did get a drag reduction when we had the denticles, and most of it is due to the viscous drag being reduced, which aligns with theory. And when we tested multiple different species, we did see macroshark coming out on top, along with another species, C. limbitus, we'll see him again, and around 2%. We got less drag reduction than the simulation because the denticles are smaller, where ours is to scale. And the riblets here, if we plot riblets with drag reduction, we'll see most of them had 2 riblets, but the one with 4 riblets did get a very high drag reduction. And here we can see the drag reduction with riblet depth, so how deep the holes are. And we see it first increases as a drag reduction and then decreases. And microshark lies right in the middle there, where it's the highest. And if we look at size versus drag, we do see there's a very sharp decrease, except for the one with the 4 riblets, which is the C. limbitus again, where it's much larger and it has the highest drag reduction. And this is scale comparison. And if our findings now kind of suggest that the C. limbitus might have better denticles for us to replicate and use and manufacture in real world scenarios. But of course, just like with every research, we have some shortcomings. So we modeled the denticles in only one row. We don't know what would happen if we have multiple rows, or how the fluid flow will affect the ones behind them. And also, we use the steady state solver instead of a transient state solver. So we don't know what's exactly happening with time, which is why we would maybe use an LES simulation, which is a transient solver, and of course put different arrangements. And now these results now matter because if we can use denticles that are larger, we can implement them more easily, which would mean less fuel consumption, even less shipping costs and flight costs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions? You two also used ORCA, right?
Yes. So we use ORCA to run the simulations. Usually we would use 2 nodes to run one simulation at a time.
Okay. How much speed up did you get, you think?
Oh, very significant compared to our local computers. I think on our local computers, stuff that would take an hour would be done in 20 minutes there. So almost a 3x.
Okay, very cool. That's great. Other questions? Okay, we're a little ahead of time, and we have a group who cannot make it. Shamil is going at 1:28, so we 8 minutes. I would prefer to wait if guests are joining for the presentation so that we don't get out of sync. So let's take a short break, 7 minutes, and then Shamil starts at 1:28 in 7 minutes. All right, Shamil, are you ready to share your slides?
Yes, I'm gonna share right now.
Sounds perfect.
Are you guys able to see it?
Yep.
Okay. It should just be the main slides, no speaker notes or anything, right?
Yep, main slides. Yep, looks
Okay,
good.
perfect. All right. Before this starts moving, okay. Hey everyone, I'm Shamil, and I want to start off by asking you guys to picture this scenario in your head. You're on a plane and there's nobody in the cockpit, and a neural network is flying it. It's done this millions of times before in simulation, but this time is different because your life is in its hands. The network isn't looking out of the window, but it's deciding what to do based on different numbers that it's constantly getting, such as altitude, speed, orientation, and where it's heading. And if you change those numbers, then you change what the network thinks is happening in real life. That's the idea behind an adversarial attack, and it's a really big problem right now for reinforcement learning agents because a small change to the input can change what the network is going to decide what to do, and it can change your life if you're in one of these scenarios. Researchers have studied this before in different environments, but not in environments like ours in a drone simulation environment. And you might be wondering why I'm building attacks instead of defenses. That's because in order to learn how to defend the model, we must first look at the vulnerabilities that are uncovered by these different attacks, and each failure will teach us something that we didn't know before. The environment that I was working in is a simulated drone environment called PyFlight, and it flies the drone from one waypoint to another. And as the drone gets closer to each waypoint, it gets more reward or points. And on average, a flight where no attack had been applied would accumulate around 314 reward, and our baseline would usually be around this number. And our idea is to have a strategically timed attack that applies perturbations at specific vulnerable moments. And this has been tested before, but in different environments, not not including drone environments. It was tested before in environments like Atari. And our environment is significantly more complex. So our focus is, what does strategically timed attack work in an environment that's continuous control, where each state depends on the previous state? And the main question that we were focusing on is, how do you pick which moments to attack? And we defined something that we called volatility, how much the drone's action would change if we were to apply an attack, specifically FGSM, which is fast gradient sign method, at this specific time step. And that's our baseline attack that we'll be using for the rest of this presentation. And to predict that, we trained a neural network on over 100,000 recorded moments, including the clean observations and the perturbed ones, so that it can learn to predict when the model would move more than if there was no attack applied. But just measuring that change in action turned out to not be enough. We also needed to measure the change in reward. So we built the predictor to minimize reward and maximize action change. But then after I started testing the attack, I got something that I wasn't expecting, and that's that on occasion it would help the model perform better. And this is an attack, so it should perform worse. And it seemed to nudge the model into exploring more of the environment. So to counter this, we did something which we called the fuzzy implementation, where we apply the attacks for a few time steps after the vulnerable moments are detected. And you can see it actually working in this image I have here. Every shaded band is the attack firing, and it fires in this case for 5 more time steps. And this is an example of a high damage flight from one of our simulations, and it finishes with around 107 reward, while a clean flight would average around 314. While this is more of an extreme scenario, this example demonstrates how the attack should work and how the attack does work when it goes correctly. Another big change, sorry, my automated slides are moving without me. Another big change was context, and whether a moment is dangerous or not also depends on the previous moments. So we gave a 10 time step window of context as well, and that significantly helped the model predict better. And when checking if the results are consistent, I found that running the same configuration multiple times gave me different numbers. So I started to seed them or set a specific seed so that the baseline and environment and the environment which we test the attack in have the same difficulty. And as a control, we also built an attack that hits exactly the same number of steps and applies the attack at those steps, but is picked at random. So we want to see if the strategic timing is actually helping or if it's just the attack doing the damage. And we screened over 160 different configurations, different threshold settings for both the action change and the reward. And the best one attacks around 30% of steps, and it consistently does damage. And 23 out of 24 of the top configurations did consistent damage, which is extremely great. And 1 in 10 episodes in our best configuration loses more than 100 points. So that means that that's a significant loss to the drone. And it could be something like a crash. As in some of the episodes, we had the model losing over 300 reward when that's the total number in the baseline. Compared to the random, the same scenarios but randomly applied, our attack also performed much better. 22 out of 24 different configurations performed better than the random timings, which reinforced the effect of the strategic timing. So the idea is to apply attacks at moments that are more vulnerable and that count, because when we have a smaller footprint, when we apply attacks, it's harder for those defenses that are in place to actually detect the attack happening. So it's more realistic. And I want to end off with a question. Would you go into an autonomous plane or car before these flaws are resolved in reinforcement learning? And our research hopes to fix these flaws by exposing the vulnerabilities so that other researchers can build defenses for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Shamil? Did you use Mojoko? I forgot.
I started off using Mujoko, but it actually didn't run well on my Mac because the specific version that we were using it had been discontinued, I think. So I switched to PyFlight, which was what everything that I did for majority of the summer was run on.
I see. Great, yeah. Mojoko is not discontinued. You probably had an old version of something.
Yeah, the specific version had some bug that hadn't been fixed, I guess, on Mac. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. I hope you can test that with a real drone at some point.
Yeah, maybe one day. I hope so.
That would
Yeah.
be really cool, yeah. All right, other questions for Shamil? Good. We have Faith and Rujego up next.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Can you all see my screen?
Yep,
Yeah.
we can see it. Yep, looks good. Perfect.
Every edit leaves a scar. Most AI photo editors feel conversational. You edit, look, edit again. We asked whether that convenience is a hidden cost, whether every regeneration quietly pushes the image further from the result actually wanted.
In practice, users rarely stop after one command. Each new instruction is applied to an already edited output. If tiny errors survive each regeneration, those errors can compound across the conversation.
Our core comparison was simple. Reach the same combined target 2 ways. One path chains edits sequentially, the other applies those same instructions once, directly to the original image.
Then our hypothesis, we predicted a compounding process. Each edit starts from pixels the model already regenerated. So even if every command is followed, small visual errors may accumulate instead of resetting.
The original proposals used instruct pix to pix, 25 COCO images, 5 categories, 5 edit levels, and 625 planned outputs, followed by LPIPS measurements and a 30-rater human study.
And then that plan failed fast. By the third chain edit, outputs were often unrecognizable. One test image took over 4 hours, and free notebook GPU limits repeatedly stopped the pipeline.
So we pivoted to Gemini's image editing API and standalone Python scripts. The implementation changed, but the scientific question and the chained versus single pass control remained intact.
And then the final study used 25 images across 5 categories. Each received 10 chain edits. At steps 1, 3, 5, and 10, we generated a single pass control with the same combined instructions.
We used LPIPS, a metric calibrated to perpetual similarity rather than raw pixel error. Then we validated the computational pattern with blind human judgments, asking which result looked more different from the original.
And then this control is crucial. At each checkpoint, the comparator starts from the original and applies all accumulated instructions at once, so the target is held constant while the regeneration path changes.
Our first finding, across every category, LPIPS distance from the original rises as the chain grows. The largest jump happens by edit 5. The average climbs from 0.17 at edit 1 to 0.75 at edit 10.
And then statistics payment correlation ranges from 0.70 to 0.85 with P below 0.0001 in every category. So every category exceeds our pre-registered raw 0.60 threshold.
This is the stronger control. The chain result increasingly diverges from a single pass edit targeting the same combined outcome. The average gap grows from 0.08 at edit 1 to 0.64 at edit 10.
The correlations are even stronger against the single pass control, 0.78 to 0.94. That matters because the intended edits are matched. What changes the sequential regeneration itself?
And then our human result, raters chose the chained image 62.1% of the time, far beyond chance. But alpha was only 0.18, so the group level signal is real, while individual comparison can remain subtle.
Mitigation, we tested one fix, carry forward a written history of prior edits. It reduced LPIPS by only 0.018 in average. Statistically significant overall, yes, but far too small to erase the degradation.
Our secondary finding, a secondary result points to saturation. The same edit type produced a smaller visible change the second time it appeared because order was fixed. We treat this as suggestive, not a clean proposal effect.
The F10 is strong. Perceptual divergence rises with chain length. The gap holds even when the target is fixed, and human raters confirm the direction at the group level. Prompt history recovers only a small fraction of the total degradation.
What we cannot claim, the evidence supports progressive divergence in the human perceptible group level effect, but we studied one model, only 30 comparator pairs received human ratings, and model stochasticity remains an unmeasured noise source.
So the answer is yes, chain editing changes the generation path, not just the number of instructions. For our 10 system, every regeneration should be treated as a cost. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you. Questions? I remember you struggled with computing power needs and it took way too long. How did you solve that problem?
First of all, we pivoted from the instruct pix to nano banana 2. So in the Instruct topics, we were using the notebooks like the Jupyter notebooks in Colab, but then now we're using Python scripts, and we were also using the terminal in our laptops. So we didn't like need the GPU, the T4 GPU. And then the other thing was it costed us more because we're using free GPU with the notebooks, but then with Python scripts and when we ran the APIs, we had to like pay money. So we used like $50 for all the calls.
Okay, that's fairly reasonable. Good. You didn't try with a free LLM.
No, we didn't try with the free LLM, yeah. Because the Gemini wanted us to purchase for the API key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we have Suhan and Kartik up next.
Yep.
You guys are ready?
Yes. Let me just share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Alrighty. So just move this. Karthik, are you ready too?
Yep.
Okay, 1 sec. Hello, everyone. So my name is Suhan Khan.
And I'm Karthik Raman.
And we both go to UIUC studying CS. Today, we're going to be talking about LensWatch, which is a citizen science platform we built for dark matter detection and gravitational microlensing event detection. So 96% of the universe is made up of dark matter and dark energy, and it's something the scientists know very little about. In fact, we don't even know what it technically is. There are a bunch of crazy theories, including it being machos or WIMPs, which are these different astronomical objects, but we honestly have no idea. And the reason for that is because dark matter gives off no E&M waves, no radiation, and no light, which means it's practically imperceptible to our senses and almost impossible to detect. One of the only ways to be able to detect dark matter is gravitational lensing. So gravitational lensing is basically a way of us using the fact that we have telescopes here and distant stars and looking at those stars and seeing their light versus time graphs to be able to detect dark matter. So this graph kind of shows what that is talking about. As you can see, there's a brightness versus time graph, and when this dark matter object gets in between the star and the telescope, there's going to be a sharp rise, which if we can detect that, we can find out where and when a dark matter object is. But in practicality, it's really, really hard. That bump, that sharp rise that I just showed you about, is the only clue that dark matter even exists. And it's something that is very hard for, like I said, humans to detect, but actually really easy for artificial intelligence models to get to detect and get really good at. Every year, there are millions of surveys, including some of which we got our data from, called the LSST, which is the Vera Rubin Observatory, and OGLI, that look for these microlensing events and dark matter object discoveries. Because, like I said, it makes up 96% of our universe. There is some software that kind of can easily find the obvious ones. Like I said, there's been experimentations with different types of models, like the KNN model, the SVC model, and different AI models to be able to detect microlensing events. But the research currently is not. It has good results, but it's not very, very accurate at detecting the non-obvious graphs, like the right one here. The left one, you can see there's a pretty sharp spike, but in reality, it's never really that obvious. In fact, the next slide is going to show something that I don't think anybody in this room will be able to tell whether it's a microlensing event or not. So the top graph here is a non-microlensing event, and the bottom is a microlensing event. But to our human eyes, because of space-time noise, there's basically no difference. And that is the key thing. How can we be able to use AI to be able to differentiate that? Right,
So even so, our CNN model achieves a score of 0.9795 on the area under the precision recall curve. And well, there are several other neural network models like compute heavy RNNs that have become good at detecting these events. But the model is not always sure because our precision is actually at 22%. So for every real event that we flag, there are roughly 4 false events that our model is flagging. So to solve this difficulty, with truly hard and ambiguous cases, we launched a crowdsourced citizen science platform where anyone with little astronomical background
can vote on what an event represents after receiving a brief training. So we've got 36 different volunteers from LinkedIn, SciStarter, and other platforms like Discord, where citizen science work is shown. And so far, we've reached 1,586 votes on roughly 300 events. And this includes 29 disagreements, around 250 plus consensus events, which we have already fed back into our model to test our hypotheses. So unlike most crowdsourced citizen science platforms, we don't just focus on the consensus, but also on disagreement from volunteers, because the cases that are hard to detect are often the ones, where discoveries might lie. And there's been some work in the field, and although not with CNNs. So we still need some more time to get ample data from our volunteers for full results. So far, we've used synthetic votes at different accuracy levels. While this led to a null result, we believe that the real data can lead to comprehensive results. So from the simulation results in the previous slide, our model didn't improve. And this kind of makes sense because our simulated volunteers, they make random errors. So the disagreement carries no signal. So currently we're still testing with real human volunteers, and we expect it to be completed in a month. And you guys can either type the URL on your browsers or just scan the QR code and try it for yourself. We'd also like to thank Professor Toysher, Nick, and altREU for the guidance.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Go ahead, if you have your phone out or like anything out, just scan the QR code. It'd be great to have more volunteers. Our full results should be we'll probably write a paper on this or present this summer at least in a couple of weeks when we get our results.
That's great. Thank you, guys. Did you get any responses from REU/altREU participants at all?
Yeah, I think we did get like 2 or 3, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is good. A lot of them. So there's this website called SciStarter that we put on our it's basically a place where you can put your citizen science websites on there. And actually there was probably 10 or 15 from there. And then the rest were just people that we got from LinkedIn because we have combined, we have a lot of good reach on LinkedIn. So we were able to get we just made posts on LinkedIn about it and on different platforms like that, and that worked out pretty well. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Great. All right, folks, go there and help the team. Thank you. Last but not least, we have Matthew, Juan, and Achmain, did I pronounce that correctly? And Kai. Group of 4.
All right, can you see the screen?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah, it's good.
All right. All right, he will start us off when he's ready.
Great.
Globally, over 400 million people live with some form of hearing loss. In Saudi Arabia alone, tens of thousands of people rely on sign language every day to connect with the world around them. This, of course, creates communication barriers with the hearing world. Although sign language recognition has continued to advance in recent years with the explosion of AI-powered technologies, we identified an ongoing issue in the trend of these developments. The accuracy of many models falls sharply when occlusions block the view of the speaker's face. Whether someone is wearing a mask for health precautions or a niqab and other headwear for religious or social reasons, many contemporary AI models lack the depth and training for accurate translations. For these reasons, we decided to tackle this project centered around the HR 1000 dataset, a dataset built specifically by and for Saudi sign language speakers. Providing 1,000 unique sentences by various signers, many of whom are wearing occluding headwear, HR provides a perfect foundation to train a model centered on the discrepancy we identified.
So sign language recognition models rely on 2 different methods: continuous sign language recognition, CSLR, and isolated sign language recognition, ISLR. Our research primarily focuses on CSLR, which interprets sentence-long sign videos rather than each sign individually. In our model, we extended an existing CSLR model named Cornet and buffed it up with facial targeting by adding a late fusion-based face branch, which works by cropping into the face of the signers. By following the path of the boxes highlighted in red, you can see that the frames and the face branch are processed in parallel to standard CoreNet, although with specific inputs and outputs differ from it. Continuing this path, iCrops can be seen as the input frames for the face branch. Coordinates for the crop frames are pre-processed by running Google's media pipe over the initial frames to extract coordinates for the said input frames. The second red box shows an iCrop encoder, where a convolutional neural network, or CNN, downsizes the crop images into a 128 number summary of the frame. After the frames are simplified, the gate box multiplies the facial detection confidence by the encoded feature, reducing the influence of unreliable frames. The resampling box is the final step before merging the two sequences. Its primary function is to temporally align coordinate and face branches to make sure both frames run at the same pace. In addition to our face branch architecture, we also had to debug some code in CoreNet itself, the CTC decoder and the face branch itself. We ran some tests to confirm which debug contributed the most to lowering word error rate, and the most important were known debugs for the CTC decoder.
Through these additions, our augmented coordinate model returned really positive results in various different categories. So we've run several different training sessions to determine efficacy and efficiency of the model, and we're still actively training it right now to continue making these improvements. But across the trials, there's an average of about 3% improvement in word error rate for both occluded and non-occluded signers. Although discrete conclusions can't really be drawn yet, these trials signify an important proof of concept. They suggest that our iCrop-focused design has genuine merit in the improvement of occluded translations, but also in general translation contexts, as you can see by the overall improvements across both variations of signers. To further verify these findings, they are compared against state-of-the-art models trained on the Ishara dataset. As you can see by the following table, our face branch augmented model performed the best out of those listed below for dev word array and test word array for both signer-independent and unseen signer translations. However, one shortcoming to note is that these models employ raw video RGB rather than pose. This was chosen because our model is also based off of RGB. Although this can be rectified in the future, certain non-Ishara focused pose-based models currently outperform face branch, something is important to consider moving forward.
Now, why does this actually matter? Although these technical and numerical results are important, the more crucial aspect we hope to highlight today is the numerous real-world practical application for what we built over the last few months. By integrating CSLR technology into AI-powered smart glasses, we hope to empower the deaf and hard of hearing communities, paving the way towards a more equitable world by allowing those who do not understand Saudi language, and potentially others similar to it. To observe real-time translation from peers and community daily life, our face branch hopes to have an immediate impact in accurate communication with signers who need their faces covered, whether for religious reasons or health precautions. We have already begun researching these physical applications and are likely to pursue a knowledge distillation approach for hardware integration. It's a common use tool for downsizing a model to improve time and cost. And in summary, our research resulted in an improvement of 3 percentage points in word error rate upon comparing to state-of-the-art models, specifically for non-occluded signers. However, more than that, it has established a strong foundation and precedent for the future works that can build upon it. And as we refine this project, we hope to bridge the gap in communication between members in these communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the team?
Are
go ahead.
autoencoders ever used in these?
Are what encoders?
Autoencoders.
I don't believe so.
Okay, I was just curious if they. Okay.
Great. Thank you, folks. That concludes our symposium, our 5th session, and we're right on time. Thank you so much, speakers, for respecting the rules and staying on time. That was amazing. That never happens in a professional conference. Usually everybody speaks a little longer, but Ignite really helped, I think. As every year, I'm blown away by the variety and the quality of the work that you've all done. Congratulations, amazing jobs. The proceedings deadline is in a week, submit your chapters, make it easy for the team who is editing the book. If you have questions, Fatima and Mohammed are the persons to contact. Good. Any questions from the audience regarding things? If not, we'll wrap things up here. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend. And for many of you, this is the end of the internship. That doesn't mean you should necessarily stop working on the project, right? You're all welcome to continue in whatever form you'd like, and we're happy to help you. Also, in whatever form we can support you. So stay in touch, and thanks again. Have a great weekend.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.